Su Bei strikes swiftly and escapes with Mo Xiaotian, leaving the others unaware. Si Zhaohua, clueless about the theft, inspects the Nightmare Monkey's corpse and casually offers to cook it. Though born into luxury, he'd learned the skill for moments just like this. Ai Baozhu, unfazed by the grotesque meat thanks to past experiences, responds with flair, summoning a rose and flashing a sweet smile that says, "You cook, I'll watch." Cooking wasn't in her destiny. Zhou Renji, equally inept in the kitchen, just stares at Zhaohua, hoping to be fed without asking. Zhaohua, too proud to mock anyone, grills 2 pieces and hands them over without a word. But mid-bite, Ai Baozhu notices something off. No points earned. Elsewhere, Su Bei, now far away, checks his watch and smirks. Mission complete. Only then does Mo Xiaotian catch up mentally. Panic flickering, did stealing that nightmare just start a war? Su Bei crossed his arms with mock righteousness and declared, "What do you mean stealing?" They needed food, we needed points, no conflict at all. His teammate blinked, puzzled, clearly not following the twisted logic. Shrugging it off, Su Bei scanned the eerie surroundings. Let's just rest here. We haven't picked our next mission yet. The other hesitated, suggesting they go hunt more nightmares or eliminate teams while the opportunity was hot. But Su Bei, leaning back against a tree with lazy confidence, waved it off. What's the rush? It's only day 1. The competition lasted 2 days, and the second day was when the real chaos began. Point stealing would spike, rankings would flip, and early leaders would become glowing targets. With the leaderboard exposed, the smart move was to play it cool. At the moment, their team sat comfortably at 500 points, while the second place held only 200. Letting others catch up a little was part of the plan. Su Bei hadn't pushed for that earlier mission just for fun. It was a setup for a second-day ambush, a plan hidden behind casual indifference. Su Bei knew that if their score stayed suspiciously low, others would catch on and paint them as the enemy of all. He didn't know if Jiang Tianming shared his idea. But 2 hours passed without a single new mission popping up. Their score crept up by only 60 points. The hiding spot was genius. No humans, no nightmares, nothing. Su Bei was enjoying the break, but Mo Xiaotian bored out of his skull. First quiet, then jogging, now trying to make fire caveman-style rubbing sticks together without a clue about oxygen. Su Bei blinked at the sight and barely held in a laugh. Then rustling leaves. Something or someone was coming. Su Bei shifted into alert mode while Mo Xiaotian lit up like it was game time. With a grin and puppy eyes, he mouthed, "Can we not hide?" Su Bei sighed and nodded between their skills and plot immunity. They'd be fine. Moments later, a group emerged from the trees, familiar faces from Class F. The moment they crossed paths, tension sparked. Zhao Xiaoyu stood at the front, clearly leading the group, her eyes narrowing with guarded surprise upon seeing Su Bei and Mo Xiaoshan. No greetings, no pleasantries, just quiet acknowledgement from the Class F students, who kept their distance. After the recent rankings, it was no secret. Su Bei's team had left them far behind. They no longer saw him as one of their own, more like a dragon miscast in a pond of minnows. Mo Xiaotian, though not from their class, sensed the chill and wisely kept silent behind Su Bei. Breaking the silence, Zhao Xiaoyu forced a smile and asked about Jiang Tianming. Su Bei answered honestly, unbothered, confident in his own strength. But he wasn't there to be questioned. He fired back, asking how they ended up together. Zhao Xiaoyu's smile faded into something more bitter, drawing subtle sympathy from those around her. Su Bei figured she was probably faking the bitterness, but let her talk anyway. She claimed Class A was only teamed with Class F because of the school rules, and had never really wanted them around. Once they entered the dimensional space, Class A ditched them entirely. Su Bei saw that coming. But Mo Xiaotian clearly didn't. His eyes popped open in outrage, like someone just tore a rare comic. "What? They just left you? That's insane," he shouted. That one spark lit up all the grievances Class F had been bottling up. Voices flew. "They acted nice at first, but dumped us. Someone said we didn't even belong in the competition. They would have thrown us out if they could." Mo Xiaotian matched their anger beat for beat, playing the perfect emotional amplifier. Knowing him, Su Bei doubted it was for drama, though it sure looked like it. Still, Mo Xiaotian's reputation in Class F helped. They liked him already. Meanwhile, Zhao Xiaoyu watched it all with glittering eyes, then stepped in like a dramatic heroine. "I gathered the abandoned ones to prove we're not pushovers." With their powers rendered useless, she spoke with quiet despair, admitting they couldn't even take down a basic nightmare and would likely be eliminated soon without support. A bitter smile tugged at her lips as she added that perhaps it was better this way, they might only become burdens. Her performance was so moving that it instantly drew Mo Xiaoxian's sympathy, and he turned to Subi Ei with a hopeful tone. But before he could finish, Subi Ei jumped in dramatically, praising her noble spirit for rejecting aid just to uphold Class F's pride. If not bound to his teammate, he claimed he'd rush to help them himself. She froze. Immediately catching on this wasn't praise, it was a cleverly veiled blockade. She'd misplayed the scene, and Subi Ei flipped the script. Mo Xiaoshan, however, took it at face value and apologized sincerely for almost imposing his help. Watching her plan unravel, she forced a smile, then quickly collected herself and made a clean exit, regaining composure with classic grace. Updated saved memory. After putting on her usual polite smile, she quickly turned and led her group back the way they came. Just as they were about to leave, a voice called out, "Isn't it exhausting carrying so many people?" Zhao Xiaoyu's face flickered for a moment before she returned a warm smile. "Not at all. We're helping each other out." Subi Ei studied her, his mind racing. He couldn't decide whether her words were truthful, but one thing was certain. Zhao Xiaoyu wasn't dragging this crowd around purely out of kindness. If it were just Wu Jin, that would make sense. They were in the same group, abandoned together, so sticking together was logical. But bringing others from Class F? That seemed pointless. They were more like moving targets for their enemies than anything useful. Even a human wave strategy wouldn't stand a chance against the powerful abilities of Class A and B students. Then, a thought hit him. If Si Zhaowo was with Ai Baozhu and Zhao Xiaoyu was with Wu Jin, where was Feng Lan? Subi Ei furrowed his brows and called out before Zhao Xiaoyu could leave. "Where's Feng Lan?" Zhao Xiaoyu froze for a moment, realization dawning. "You've seen Si Zhaowa's group, haven't you? They didn't get rid of you?" If Subi Ei hadn't encountered Si Zhaowa, how else would he know to ask about Feng Lan after spotting Zhao Xiaoyu and Wu Jin together? Subi Ei didn't respond, instead asking again, "Where's Feng Lan?" The question hung heavily in the air, a sense of dread creeping up as Subi Ei felt something was wrong. He knew the others might abandon Zhao Xiaoyu and Wu Jin, but Feng Lan would never be cast aside like that. Did he leave willingly? Unlikely. With his ability, Prophecy, Feng Lan needed protection and wasn't the type to act alone. So, why was he missing? Zhao Xiaoyu, sensing a chance to gain something in exchange, tried to bargain for the information, but Wu Jin interrupted, bluntly stating he disappeared. Both Su Bei and Zhao Xiaoyu turned to him, but while Zhao Xiaoyu looked confused and shocked by the sudden revelation, Su Bei's expression darkened, his worry deepening. How did he disappear? Su Bei pressed, his unease growing. Wu Jin simply replied, "He disappeared as soon as we entered. But we're in the school, so there's nothing to worry about." The words felt off, and Subi Ei, looking at the bigger picture, instantly realized something was terribly wrong. While it might seem like Zhao Xiaoyu and Wu Jin acted recklessly from a student's point of view, the Ability Academy was supposed to be a safe zone. Reporting anything strange would mean giving up the match, something neither of them wanted. When Subi Ei, after a pause, warned them not to head in a certain direction, the group hesitated. For Zhao Xiaoyu and Wu Jin, the warning indicators only shifted slightly, but for those trailing behind, the dials nearly maxed out. That couldn't be a coincidence. Either Zhao Xiaoyu was leading them into a trap, or there was real danger ahead. Subi Ei hadn't spoken up before, not out of malice, but because he simply didn't feel like helping. However, since Wu Jin had supported him earlier, he returned the favor. Zhao Xiaoyu, quick on the uptake, didn't question him. Her instincts told her Su Bei's power was probably tied to fate or probability, and he had no reason to deceive someone who'd just done him a solid. When she asked if a new direction would be safer, Subi Ei confirmed, and though it wasn't perfect, it was safe enough. As the group moved on, Zhao Xiaoyu shot a curious glance at Wu Jin. Her voice light, but probing. Was his info drop to Subi Ei just a ploy to win favor? She didn't accuse him, not really. After all, she too had gained from the moment. But Su Bei's unexpected reaction made her realize something. Taking advantage of Su Bei through deals was one thing, but getting benefits with zero cost? That was a whole new level. What puzzled her more was Woo Jin himself, normally quiet, reserved, not the type to step into the spotlight. Had she read him wrong all this time? Woo Jin only shook his head, silent. Maybe he didn't know why he spoke either. Maybe he just felt that Subi Ei needed that answer, like something deep inside insisted it mattered. While Zhao Xiaoyu and Subi Ei were mid-chat, Mo Xiaoxian drifted back from the group's chatter and spotted Subi Ei locked in thought, eyes fixed on his watch. "Brother BEI, what are you staring at?" he asked, as blunt as ever. Subei's finger brushed the glass slowly, unreadable as always. "What do you think, has anyone been eliminated yet?" Mo Xiaoxian blinked, confused by the question. "Of course," he replied like it was obvious. Subi Ei didn't say more. He rose, a quiet resolve forming. "Let's go find Jiang Tianming." Mo Xiaotian, ever loyal, didn't hesitate. All right. Mo Xiaoxian didn't get what Subi Ei was doing, but that never stopped him. His genius lay in trusting the smarter guy. BEI, meanwhile, was already putting the pieces together. Something stank in the team competition, and it wasn't just missing students. Any regular kid might have blamed a glitchy portal or the Academy's secret ops for Fenglan's vanishing act. But Subi Ei wasn't regular. He knew he was living inside a manga. So why Fenglan? Why now? The answer was inked into the plot. Fenglan had prophecy, and unlike Subei's hidden powers, his was broadcast loud and clear. Everyone knew Fenglan's ability fired once a month, and the clock was ticking. He was due for his next vision. That alone made him a prime target. BEI figured the villains either wanted this month's prophecy, or worse, they wanted to shut it down before it ever got drawn. Because if Fenglan saw them coming, the whole evil master plan might unravel before it began. And in a world made of story panels, one well-timed vision could change everything. BEI didn't want to admit it, but even he had to agree the more dramatic twist made for a juicier story. If everything was tied to a massive hidden scheme, then the stakes weren't just high, they were personal. And if that was true, then he needed a plan. A survival plan. Unlike the main characters in every hot-blooded manga who somehow dodged death until the final arc, BEI knew his rise from background fodder to semi-important role didn't come with built-in plot armor. When he once asked Manga Awareness if he had the same death-defying shield as the leads, the answer hit harder than a villain's monologue. Not a chance. At best, he'd die with flair, not protection. So when he realized that his prophetic ability might put a target on his back just like Fenglan's, the choice became clear: safety over peace. He decided to rejoin the main crew. At least they weren't easy prey, and sticking with them might buy him time. That is, until he opened the map on his wristwatch and saw the screen freeze. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Mo Xiaotian blinked in confusion, squinting at Subei's map until his jaw dropped. Their targets were moving at lightning speed. BEI, always quick on the draw, guessed they were being chased and proposed they check it out. He wasn't too worried. It was only day one. No way the villains were already making big moves. Still, the chase led them in the opposite direction, and if it weren't for the map, they'd have missed each other entirely. As darkness swallowed the forest, BEI and Mo Xiaotian finally caught up. Lucky for them, the pursuers hadn't chased in a straight line, otherwise, no way they'd have kept up. Mo Xiaotian, now a human puddle of sweat, leaned against BEI, wheezing. Up ahead, bathed in scraps of moonlight, a ragged group of students caught their breath. One of them snapped, kicking a tree and shouting into the void, "What are they, rabbits?" One exhausted teammate hesitated, proposing they drop the chase since the targets weren't worth many points, but the tree kicker exploded in rage. Refusing to back down, Jiang Tianming had humiliated him once in the arena, and pride demanded revenge. BEI instantly recognized him, a minor villain who'd once taken a brutal hit to the groin during that very match, a moment so absurd it lived rent-free in a single manga frame. Though BEI had never seen the fight live, that image alone made it clear why the guy held a grudge. Meanwhile, Mo Xiaotian, having overheard, quietly asked BEI if they should eliminate them, a word that triggered a jolt behind Subei's eye. Paranoia stirred. He'd been silently considering the worst. What if this whole event was a trap, a twisted conspiracy targeting all first years? Logically, they should be safe. The moment their lives were truly threatened, the fragile glass on their wristbands would break and eject them. But in a world unraveling at the seams, even logic had started to glitch. The forest was thick with fear, And it didn't take much, just a few gear-triggered tricks from Su Bei to send the student group scattering like startled birds. They were young, barely past 15, and bravery wasn't on the curriculum tonight. Amid the chaos, Mo Xiaotian zeroed in on one unlucky boy, trapping him with airtight blocks, sealing off any escape route. Panic flickered across the boy's face as he called for help, but his so-called allies had already chosen self-preservation. And just like that, Su Bei emerged from the shadows, cool and unhurried, and took him down with ease. The boy gasped, almost grateful, realizing he was up against a person, not a ghost. Su Bei confirmed it with a glint of moonlight and a faint smirk. So, leaving on your own, or do I give you a hand? The boy, clutching at slim hope, asked to be released. Su Bei tilted his head. What do you think? Yeah, not a chance. With a sigh, he muttered, Fine, I'll leave on my own. He wasn't really surprised he hadn't been much help in the team battle, and becoming a captive was pretty much the expected outcome. As the teachers had mentioned earlier, the sooner you're out, the sooner your break begins. And to him, that didn't sound half bad. Before he left, Su Bei gave him one last task. Once you're out, find Mr. Meng Huai from Class F and tell him that Feng Lan disappeared as soon as he entered this space. He might be in danger. Got it. You're kicking me out and still making me do your errands? What a great friend, he grumbled before smashing the glass on his watch. In an instant, he vanished. Mo Xiaotian couldn't hold back his awe, eyes wide as he gushed. Wow, that's amazing. You can just leave like that? And breaking the glass was so easy too. I thought I'd have trouble with it if I ever had to. Su Bei nodded, his expression softening with a hint of relief. Yeah, it's pretty convenient. With that, they knew that breaking the glass was still the key to exiting this alternate space, and there was nothing to worry about for now. Something didn't add up, and Su Bei froze. Why had he assumed disappearing meant returning to the academy? That logic shattered as soon as he realized Feng Lan vanished too. This was only the first day of the group competition. Even if the enemy planned sabotage, wasn't it too early? What if today's teleportation worked fine, but glitched later? Trust couldn't come easy now. He decided regrouping with Jiang Tianming was the only real plan. Darkness crept in, and they still had no shelter. Meanwhile, Jiang and Mutiren had stopped running, their pursuers vanished, but the tension didn't. Tired and cornered, they knew if another fight broke out, they'd have no choice but to stand their ground. The moment they finally thought they were safe, Jiang and Mu realized something was off. Why had the enemy suddenly stopped chasing them? Just as they caught their breath, the rustling from the bushes snapped them back into combat mode. Outnumbered 2-12, but confident from their top 10 ranks, they braced for a fight. But what burst out wasn't danger, it was two familiar shockers, a head of gold and a head of red. Su Bei and Mo Xiaotian had arrived, unexpected and almost too perfectly timed. Suspicion still lingered as Jiang blocked a would-be bear hug and double-checked the map on his watch. The dots matched. Allies confirmed. Then came the bombshell. Su Bei coolly stated they'd taken down one of the pursuers and earned 10 points doing it. Jiang Tianming glanced at the scoreboard, already piecing it together 10 points per player, 50 for a nightmares. Clearly, teamwork and task completion trumped solo skirmishes. Su Bei, ever the strategist, agreed, scanning the area as he suggested, holding off on point hunting until day 2. Tianming's eyes lit up. They were on the same wavelength. That's why he'd been playing it low-key after his first completed mission, even dodging at nightmares when it came into view. That earlier kill had taught him a sharp lesson. Mental power recovery here was a snail's crawl compared to the academy. No naps or quiet meditation could fix that fast. One careless fight, and he'd be drained easy prey, a walking joke. Better to conserve now, strike later. And that, exactly, was the point of this whole exercise. Real missions wouldn't hand out recovery time on a silver platter. Power had to be rationed, sharpened, wielded with precision. Jiang Tianming glanced at the scoreboard, already piecing it together 10 points per player, 50 for a nightmares. Clearly, teamwork and task completion trumped solo skirmishes. Su Bei, ever the strategist, agreed, scanning the area as he suggested, holding off on point hunting until day 2. Tianming's eyes lit up. They were on the same wavelength. That's why he'd been playing it low-key after his first completed mission, even dodging in nightmares when it came into view. That earlier kill had taught him a sharp lesson. Mental power recovery here was a snail's crawl compared to the academy. No naps or quiet meditation could fix that fast. One careless fight, and he'd be drained, easy prey, a walking joke. Better to conserve now, strike later. And that, exactly, was the point of this whole exercise. Real missions wouldn't hand out recovery time on a silver platter. Power had to be rationed, sharpened, wielded with precision. Jiang Tianming glanced at the scoreboard with a knowing nod, 10 points for each elimination, 50 for a nightmares. Clearly, missions were more rewarding than solo brawls. Su Bei, scanning the area like a strategist in a panel war zone, suggested regrouping and saving energy for the second day instead of scrambling for early points. Jiang lit up finally, someone on his wavelength. That's why he hadn't acted much after the first task. Even when he saw a nightmares, he dodged it like a filler arc nobody wanted. His mental power, usually quick to recover, now crawled back slower than a rebooted side character. Meditation or sleep helped. Sure, but in this warped world, even rest felt like grinding through heavy ink. One fight could cost him a day and a half of clarity. Maybe more. So he made the call. Conserve now, strike later. Better that than end up someone else's tragic subplot. And that, right there, was the Academy's point. Real missions didn't come with safe cooldowns. This was a lesson in narrative survival. Use your power smart, or get erased from the page. By 1 in the morning, tension was thicker than the forest mist. Sleep meant vulnerability, and in this twisted competition, that could mean elimination. While most teens could brush off a late night, this wasn't just staying up, it was survival. Su Bei scanned the area, hoping for a cave or even a tree hollow, but the forest offered no favors. Constructing a shelter would take forever. With a sigh, he offered to take the first night watch and started prepping the sleeping area. No one was lying directly on the ground unless they wanted to wake up as a bug buffet. He layered leaves to keep the cold and critters at bay and sparked up a campfire despite the risk of drawing attention. Fire was heat, light, and maybe a warning to enemies. Su Bei moved like someone who'd done this before, efficient and calm. The others, once done discussing their shifts, jumped in to help. It became clear quickly Su Bei and Mu Tian were the pros here, and even though Jiang Tianming was green, he caught on fast. Mo Xiaotian might not have been the fastest or most skilled, but he was great at keeping the team's spirits high. The group settled on a watch schedule. Xiaotian would take the first shift, followed by the class monitor, and Su Bei would take the last one. Each shift lasted an hour and a half, and they all agreed to wake up at 8 a.m. Su Bei, not one to fuss, accepted it without complaint, especially since he had started the fire and figured it was only fair to get a bit of an easier shift. Soon, they had everything set up, the bedding arranged, the fire crackling, and the shifts began. At 6:30 a.m., Su Bei was jolted awake by Mutiran's voice. His body naturally reacted to danger, and he instantly checked his watch. He didn't mind being woken up exactly on time. Anything later would have annoyed him. When the shift change came, Su Bei stretched, knowing that despite the plans for a quiet day, the competition was never predictable. And sure enough, by 7:30 a.m., things were about to get more complicated. Just as the night held its breath, Su Bei caught a faint rustle above his eyes, locked onto a shadow slithering down a tree. A monstrous black serpent, thick as a grown man's arm, its body endlessly stretching through the branches. It moved with eerie precision, head nearly grazing the ground while its tail remained lost in the leaves. Without hesitation, Su Bei hurled a gear at it, but the beast twisted away with uncanny speed. The game was up. No more sneaking, the snake lunged straight at Jiang Tianming. Su Bei yelled, dashed, kicked Jiang awake, then launched a flying strike that sent the creature crashing back. Good thing he wore the Academy's reinforced uniform. Without it, that stunt might have ended in disaster. The sudden chaos jolted everyone awake. Blinking and dazed, Jiang Tianming followed Su Bei's gaze only to meet the snake's chilling stare, its towering body poised to strike. Mo Xiaotian's jaw dropped. That's one big snake. The serpent hissed, body undulating like a loaded spring. Su Bei's voice cut through the tension sharp, urgent. It's fast. Xiaotian, trap it. On it, came the reply. And the fight was on. Mo Xiaotian bursts out, summoning 10 transparent air blocks to shield the crew just as Mutiran coolly analyzes the threat, noting that this nightmare snake likely isn't venomous, its head's too proportionate, according to the books. That gives the team a bit of relief. Jiang Tianming calls on Su Bei for some gear, and with synchronized force and the age-old tactic of striking the snake's 7-inch weak point, they attack. The snake, though quick, finds itself cornered. Mo Xiaotian's barriers hemming it in, blows landing fast. It doesn't take long. The nightmare snake crashes in defeat. Still cautious, the group checks their watches, score confirmed. 50 points. Only then do they approach. Su Bei grabs the serpent's tail and raises it with a grin, breakfast plans forming. Nightmare snake meat is a rare treat. Jiang Tianming laughs, imagining it lasting through lunch, and Mo Xiaotian's already hyped to grill, promising a taste of his barbecue skills. The others? Dubious. Mu Tiren teased with a smirk, clearly entertained, while Jiang Tianming, ever the tactician in the kitchen, graciously let Mo Xiaotian take the spotlight, seeing how pumped he was to shine. But just as Xiaotian received the snake from Su Bei, his eager glow dimmed, overtaken by visible distress. Mu Tiren, always quick to pick up on shifts, asked if maybe he'd never handled a snake before. Xiaoshin shook his head, annoyed not at the snake, but at the very real need to clean it. A monster like that couldn't just be tossed on a fire without scrubbing, and wasting their precious bottled water wasn't an option. That's when Jiang Tianming stepped in like a memory-powered compass, recalling the river they passed the day before and confidently offering to guide the way. Mu Tiren was genuinely surprised. How could anyone remember a route through this tangle of forest? Jiang Tianming's quiet smile said it all, a silent weight hinting there was more to his memory than just direction. Sensing the shift in his tone, Mu Tiren paused, instinctively respecting boundaries some things just weren't meant to be pried into. He and Su Bei might have been friends, but not the kind who traded secrets over campfires. Half an hour into following Jiang Tianming, the forest opened up to the sound of rushing water, plus something more. Voices. Su Bei, ever perceptive, noted the obvious people tend to flock to rivers for survival, but with a quick mental scan, he got precise. 15 people split into 2 peaceful groups. No alarm bells yet. As they stepped out of the trees, every eye turned toward them, but one green-haired guy nearly choked on recognition he'd tasted defeat at Su Bei's hands before. Su Bei just smiled, waved casually, and dropped a chill line. "Oh, what a coincidence," the guy fired back, flustered. "Coincidence, my foot?" The green-haired boy, seething with anger, couldn't hold back. "Don't you feel even a little guilty when you see me?" he demanded. After his early elimination, he had been trailing Su Bei's progress, and to his surprise, he realized that Su Bei wasn't just a trickster. His skills were undeniable. Now, the green-haired boy wasn't as humiliated by the loss. After all, a defeat to someone from Class F stung, but losing to someone ranked among the top 10 was a different story. Yet, a nagging question still echoed in his mind. Why had Su Bei used tricks to win instead of just showcasing his real abilities? It felt like mockery. "You could have beaten me easily, but you chose to humiliate me," he said, his voice a mix of anger and hurt. Su Bei remained silent. Could he really explain the real reason behind his actions? Sadly, the truth was too complex, and the boy would never know. With a quiet sigh, Su Bei brushed off the accusations and crouched by the riverbank. "What are you waiting for? Come clean the snake," he called to Mo Xiaoshin. "Snap!" Mo Xiaoshin jolted back to reality and hurried to start cleaning the giant snake. Everyone by the river couldn't help but stare at the massive creature in awe. The green-haired boy, eyes wide with disbelief, shifted his gaze between Su Bei and the terrifying nightmare snake. The green-haired boy yelled, his voice sharp with anger. "Don't you feel even a little guilty when you see me?" Clearly, losing in the first round had left a bitter taste, but after trailing Su Bei's later matches, he came to a grudging realization. Su Bei wasn't just a trickster. He had real, undeniable skill. That revelation softened the sting. Being beaten by someone from Class F was humiliating, but by someone ranking in the top 10? That was survivable. Still, it gnawed at him. Why the deception in their match? Why not win outright with power instead of playing him like a joke? "You clearly could have beaten me outright, but instead, you chose to humiliate me," he muttered, half hurt, half furious. Su Bei said nothing. Maybe he really had no choice back then. But that silence stung worse. As if brushing off the whole confrontation, Su Bei crouched by the riverbank and barked at Mo Xiaotian. "What are you standing around for? Come clean the snake!" Jolted back to reality, Mo Xiaotian rushed over, hoisting the massive snake and beginning to clean it. All eyes snapped to the creature. It wasn't just big, it was nightmare level. The green-haired boy stared, stunned, at the beast, then at Subi again, his disbelief deepening. He didn't beg for food, he played his ace right away. The green-haired boy leaned in with a sly grin and said he had intel worth 1,000 points. That number alone made Jiang Tianming freeze. 5 beasts had only netted them 500, so what kind of mission was worth double that? Suspicion turned into curiosity as Subi glanced at the leaderboard. Sure enough, the top teams had rocketed ahead. The green-haired boy smirked, saying the task was already done and ridiculously simple. Just hand over your watch. Upon hearing this, the team suddenly noticed something odd. None of the people by the river wore watches. It wasn't a mistake. They usually kept their watches tucked under their sleeves to avoid damaging the glass. But why was this mission worth 1,000 points? Mutiran's instincts kicked in, and he could sense something was off. The green-haired boy casually explained, "It's simple. With the watch, we can track teammates, complete tasks, and steal points. Without it, we can't do anything. So, if we lose that ability, we should get some compensation." Jiang Tianming immediately spotted a flaw. Why not wait until the last moment to finish the task? That way, you can still earn the earlier points and complete the mission. The green-haired boy grew tense but quickly replied, "The earlier you hand in the watch, the more points you get. First place gets 1,000 points, second gets 950, and so on, decreasing by 50 each time." Jiang Tianming pieced it together. The boy had shared this because the points had already decreased for him, making it less valuable to keep quiet. He was probably just trying to secure his position. "So, you're planning to stick together until the end of the 3 days?" Jiang Tianming asked. "Exactly." The green-haired boy chuckled. The green-haired boy offered a tempting deal: complete the mission under his lead and stick with them safely until the exam ended. Jiang Tianming saw through him immediately, accusing him of just wanting free bodyguards. The boy didn't even bother denying it and pushed again, knowing this team's combat record spoke for itself. Most of them were from Class F, yet they ranked among the top 10 in solo battles. With them nearby, he had little to fear about elimination. Technically, even if someone got taken out now, it wouldn't cost them much without their watches. Point loss was minimal. But Jiang Tianming hesitated. Sure, the mission wasn't worth many points, but that didn't mean they were out of options. They could still rack up more by hunting beasts or other students. The risk seemed worth it, and yet the whole setup smelled wrong. Why would the test help weaker students catch up? Then, Subi, grinning with unreadable interest, spoke up before anyone else could decide. They weren't saying yes, but they did want to see that tablet. As he said it, he tossed a grilled fish to the green-haired boy, still hot from Mo Xiaotian's hands. He didn't beg for food, he played his ace right away. The green-haired boy leaned in with a sly grin and said he had intel worth 1,000 points. That number alone made Jiang Tianming freeze. 5 beasts had only netted them 500, so what kind of mission was worth double that? Suspicion turned into curiosity as Subi glanced at the leaderboard. Sure enough, the top teams had rocketed ahead. The green-haired boy smirked, saying the task was already done and ridiculously simple. Just hand over your watch. The situation could only be described as a deep misfortune. Calling it anything less would be an understatement. Though Subi appeared calm on the outside, inside, he was weighed down by uncertainty. The group exam seemed to have a hidden agenda, and he wasn't sure if he'd make it through unscathed. As the conversation unfolded, Mutiran approached, sensing something was off. Before Subi could respond, Wu Mingbai's voice cut in, announcing their long-awaited return to the main group after an exhausting journey. Lan Subing, a little disheveled, eagerly asked if anything had happened. Jiang Tianming handed out grilled snake meat to everyone and quickly recapped the earlier events. Subi remained silent, unsure of the bigger picture, but sensing something wasn't right, he couldn't outright say it was a conspiracy. But his instincts, honed by years of manga reading, screamed that something was wrong. Mo Xiaotian, noticing Subei's hesitation, raised his hand, ready to take action. Mo Xiaotian boldly volunteers to take on the mission, challenging fate itself until Mutiran shuts him down with a swift smack to the head. With uncharacteristic sternness, Mutiran scolds him for his recklessness, while Wu Mingbai mocks his wannabe hero complex. But Mo Xiaotian, surprisingly sincere, apologizes for causing worry, melting even the most stubborn resistance. Jiang Tianming sighs, urging him to think about his own safety next time. The tension softens, and the group follows the green-haired guide to a lone stone tablet, eerily familiar but loaded with a new challenge. Mission 30. The goal? Collect watches, tap them to the screen, and the recycled ones vanish, either eliminated or ejected, in 3 days. Reward? 650 points. The stakes just got real. With a smug grin, the green-haired boy teased, "See? I told you I wasn't lying. Just take the mission, 650 points. Wait too long, and the reward drops. Subei's eyes locked on the tablet, his expression stiffening. He glanced at the boy, words on the tip of his tongue, but swallowed them. Sensing the tension, Mutirin subtly whisked the boy away, leaving Subei to exhale and regain his calm. "Remember what the dean said about escaping this alternate space?" he asked. And Jiang Tianming recited perfectly. Break the watch, take a fatal hit, eliminate all students, destroy every nightmare, or survive 3 days. Subei nodded, pleased, no need to spell it all out again. Then came the real question. Which of those methods actually involved their watches? Jiang paused, thinking. Breaking the watch. Dying. And probably the 3-day wait, too? It clicked the dean had said they'd be transported out after 3 days. But how? The answer had to be the watch. While Jiang Tianming focused on the question, the others grew visibly unsettled until Subei, with that cryptic smile, broke the silence and let the tension snap. Mutirin's voice cut through the dread. The watches weren't just tools, they were lifelines, the only guaranteed way out of this fractured space. Suddenly, everything Jiang had said clicked into place like cursed puzzle pieces. The mission to collect watches? A trap. A clean severing of their escape routes disguised as teamwork. If they lost those watches and faced real danger, could they even survive? That doubt alone chilled the group more than any nightmare. Wu Mingbai tried to brush it off with a half-joke about school tests and bonus points, but the unease in his tone betrayed him. Who'd suspect enemies lurking in a school-run simulation? Subei didn't answer. He just toyed with his watch and said, almost too calmly, that he'd go alone from here. What? Why? Shock ripples through the group as Mo Xiaotian blurts out the question everyone's thinking Subei's leaving solo? Calm and determined, Subei confirms it. This place is strange, intriguing, and he wants to wander off script. Now that the party's back together, Mo can rely on the plot's protective shield. He doesn't need Subei anymore. Earlier, Subei had stuck close to the main characters to avoid danger. But now, thanks to the mission tablet, he realizes the enemy's plan hinges on them voluntarily removing their watches. That means teleportation can't be forcibly disabled, just tricked. So long as he keeps his on, he's safe. With danger downgraded and autonomy unlocked, Subei's ready to veer off the narrative rails. Sticking to the protagonist means staying inside their story. And that's not the role he wants. He doesn't aim to be a sidekick. He wants mystery, freedom, and maybe even a taste of the darker side, because the key to his mission might lie in places heroes never go. Lan Subing, voice barely audible, whispers that going solo is risky. He flashes a confident look. Don't worry. An arrow pointed southeast. What now? Mo Xiaotian scratched his head, clearly puzzled. Do we just go that way? Everyone silently agreed, glancing towards Subei, the walking mystery machine. But Subei, ever the cryptic narrator, just dropped. When the time comes, its meaning will be clear, like he was previewing a twist no one could spoil. That line yanked Jiang Tianming back to their first prophecy nonsense back then, chilling truth once they saw those creepy purple-red eyes. Meanwhile, the game just got more dangerous. People without watches can't leave the alternate space, basically making them monster bait. Luckily, Qi Huang's no pushover rookie, sure, but her power's no joke. Still, charging after every weird noise, that's how horror arcs start. When Subei hints she might be playing with fire, Qi Huang drops the playfulness, eyes sharp. What do you mean by that? No mockery here, he knows she just saved him. But trust? That's earned panel by panel. An arrow pointing southeast appears, throwing Mo Xiaotian into confusion as he scratches his head and wonders aloud if they should follow it. The others share the same question, their gazes locking onto Subei, silently urging him to decode the meaning. Subei, already sensing the obviousness of the clue, chooses to hold back the full truth and replies with a cryptic promise. Understanding will come at the right time. Jiang Tianming, hearing this, is instantly reminded of their very first prophecy, one they couldn't understand until they saw the purple-red eyes of the murderer, and then everything had clicked. Meanwhile, Chi Huang, despite her strength and protective instincts, grows cautious as Su Bei warns her subtly about her habit of chasing after every suspicious sound. Realizing he isn't mocking her, but offering a genuine warning, she shifts into serious mode and demands clarification. Even if someone wanted to be ungrateful, they wouldn't act so fast, but Su Bei doesn't waste time. With a casual wave, he's gone, leaving Chi Huang staring after him, frowning, calculating. She doesn't know much, but the name Gears of Destiny echoes in her mind like a ticking threat. Ai Baoju's intel wasn't wrong. Su Bei's power isn't flashy, it's fate-twisting. After hesitating, Chi Huang stomps the ground and rushes back to her team's safety in numbers. Meanwhile, Su Bei follows the arrow into the warp expanse, where nearly 200 participants move like ants in a shifting maze. Each step southeast drags an eerie weight too many nightmares, too often. His senses stretch wider as his mental power recovers, revealing shadows that shouldn't be there. In just 30 minutes, he detects 5 lurking nightmares, 4 asleep, 1 dead by his hand. But it's not the number that unsettles him, it's the pattern. Something's off, and the gearwork of fate is spinning faster than it should. Maybe the nightmares had always lurked here, silent and unseen until now. At first, Su Bei thought it was just a tougher zone, where nightmare lizards, monkeys, snakes, and wasps zip through the shadows with frightening speed. He chalked it up to the Academy's clever plan. Throw fast nightmares at the students to test their aim and sharpen their reflexes. But then came the bear, the boar, the turtle. Not fast, just terrifying. The nightmare bear, especially, a hulking mass of ink and muscle, clearly not part of the training script. The headmaster had sworn all high-level nightmares were wiped out before the test. So who wrote this monster in? That's when it hit him. This wasn't the Academy's doing. These weren't random. Someone else was moving pieces behind the scenes. The mastermind. And with every ink-drenched step deeper into the wilds, Su Bei knew one thing. He was headed exactly where they didn't want him to go. Though mental power could trace outlines, it lacked the precision his eyes delivered. Su Bei needed every detail sharp. Around the house, strangers in school uniforms moved in and out like clockwork. Those exiting carried sealed boxes. Those entering brought in stacks of watches, clearly recovering what the mission tablets had taken. But the true contents of those boxes? Hidden. Su Bei suspected a link to the swelling tide of nightmares. Even his fate compass flickered. Unreliable at this range, and getting closer was out of the question. These weren't clueless students. He'd memorized the faces from classes C, D, F, and especially A. Even with only a passing familiarity with B, he'd have recognized these intruders. These people? Total outsiders, hiding under school uniforms as a shield, a lie to blend in and dodge questions. Whatever they were up to, they hadn't planned to reveal it just yet, but it was already night 2, and by tomorrow, the curtain would fall. Before that happened, Su Bei had to dig out the truth. But how? He didn't know their strength, only that anyone who could sneak past Academy defenses wasn't to be taken lightly. Su Bei knew something was off. The growing number of nightmares proved it. He pushed his mental focus to the limit, scanning ahead for danger without triggering it. Still, 1 or 2 nightmares locked onto him anyway, and even those brief encounters drained his time and energy. By the time he arrived at his destination, night had already fallen. Good thing he'd eaten earlier fighting on an empty stomach? No thanks. He recalled a cafeteria rumor. Nightmare boar tasted better than most, but his own cooking skills turned that into a disaster. Even the bland dish someone else made before tasted better than his attempt. But what bothered him most wasn't the food, it was the eerie emptiness. Aside from a single known figure, he hadn't seen another student. It didn't make sense. Everyone had been scattered randomly. So where were they? It had to be the mastermind, using some ability or device to keep others out. Non-lethal. Sure, but terrifying in scope. Then, just as his senses picked up a structure, a house, he froze. A house here? That couldn't be coincidence. The school didn't drop buildings into test zones. This had to be planted by them. He crept forward, every step sharpened by dread, until the outline of the wooden house finally came into view. Even if taking one out was tempting, Su Bei knew better. Vanishing acts would only raise suspicions. But then, his eyes flashed with inspiration, and he casually turned away. He remembered spotting a nightmare rabbit earlier, fast, jumpy, and not too bright. If caught, it could become the perfect decoy. After a short chase, he snatched it by the ears and breathed a sigh of relief. Speed was its only strength. Under threat, it folded quickly. Reflecting on his earlier battles with other nightmares, he realized that every tough fight had sharpened him for this exact moment. Turns out, the Academy's brutal lessons paid off. Back at the original scene, Subi-ei stirred the bushes just loud enough to bait attention. Hook, line, and Rabbit Curie's voices rang out as armed figures crept closer, and at the perfect moment, the little black creature bolted from the shadows, just as planned. Just as the team relaxes, thinking the rabbit's merely a nightmare rabbit worth turning into supper, none of them suspects it was intentionally released a perfect bait. Who would believe a rookie squad could nab a nightmare rabbit so fast after being caught? One conjures a rope, binds the creature, and they all head back, laughing, the rabbit dangling by its ears. But Subi-ei, sharp-eyed as ever, doesn't laugh. He squints, spots the black lightning insignia on their necks, and knows instantly it's that organization. Which, oddly enough, is good news. If the culprits are familiar, the threat becomes manageable. At this point in the story, only one antagonist group seems active. Subi-ei knows two things. First, his discovery that Mo Xiaotian is secretly a member. Second, a hint from the manga itself that this group is plotting. Something big, though, that much is obvious for any villainous bunch. But the first clue, that secret connection, now that's something Subi-ei can twist to his advantage, maybe even enough to infiltrate them from the inside. He knew deception wouldn't work without the comfort of manga panels. People in reality weren't so easily fooled. So, Subi-ei devised a subtle plan, planting gears in the grass that reacted only to unfamiliar fate auras. These new devices, silent and clever, ignored those he'd already analyzed like Jiang Tianming, but vanished if strangers approached. He anchored them with a thread of mental power, relying on his recent fate readings. It was part defense, part gamble if the protagonist group found them and they made it into the manga. The seeds of doubt about his identity would bloom among readers. If not, he'd move to the next scheme. With the trap in place, he pushed his mental power into the building, risking exposure. If anyone inside had honed their mind through relentless training, unlike his shortcut of raw talent, they'd detect him instantly, and he knew then escape would be impossible. He knew the real world wasn't like a manga, no fourth wall to hide behind, no gullible audience to sway with words, so Subi-ei needed a real plan. After thinking it through, he planted special trigger-activated gears in the grass. These weren't ordinary traps, they were tuned to recognize fate auras. If the aura matched someone he had already analyzed, the gears would stay. If not, they'd vanish. It was clever, using a bit of his own mental power as a filter. Fortunately, he'd recently studied Jiang Tianming and the others, or this setup wouldn't have worked. But it wasn't just defense. Subi-ei had a meta plan. If the protagonist group discovered the gears and they appeared in the manga, he could use that to manipulate reader suspicion. If they didn't, no problem. He'd just pivot. Testing his luck, he cautiously extended his mental power into the building nearby, knowing it was risky. If someone inside had stronger power, they'd spot him immediately. Unlike them, Subi-ei had been cheating the system, not training. If caught, he wouldn't stand a chance. They figured if they could win him over, it'd be way more useful than breaking him, and while avoiding torture made sense to keep Feng Lan's family from retaliating, the real mystery was why they didn't use mind control. A shady group like this should have had tricks like that up their sleeve. The room itself offered little else worth noting. After getting the intel he needed, Subi-ei chose to fall back. It was already deep into the night. Darkness made sneaking easier, sure, but only a fool would think the enemy wasn't on alert. As someone new to using powers, he knew this wasn't the moment to go full hero mode. Rescue Feng Lan? Yeah, that was a main character problem. Subi-ei wasn't throwing his life away for that subplot. He wandered around a couple more hours, noticed fewer nightmares lurking, and finally stopped to rest, sparking a small fire. Lying on leaves, eyes shut but mind racing, he couldn't shake the sense that Black Lightning had something major brewing in this distorted realm. And with elimination rates dropping fast, the Academy would have to notice something was off soon, especially since he'd already made sure someone reported Feng Lan's disappearance. Still, Su-Bei wasn't naive. This was a manga world. The school, they wouldn't be the ones fixing anything big. Just as Su-Bei drifted into sleep, weighed down by swirling thoughts, the dawn light stirred him awake. Blinking and groggy, he instinctively checked his watch only to freeze. The display had vanished, replaced by a crimson alert. Never hand over your watch for any reason. Please check the latest mission immediately. The Academy had finally noticed something was wrong faster than he'd hoped. With a tight breath, he opened the mission screen. Flashing red, 3 new directives awaited. First, find fellow students without watches. Protect them. No harm allowed, 500 points per head. Second, identify strangers in the forest and, if possible, subdue them dangerous foes. Escape if needed, 2,000 points each. Third, a new shop, wide open and free, for now. Subei's eyes sparkled the moment the welfare mission appeared. Finally, the Academy was doing something useful. Although they couldn't bust into the alternate space just yet, this roundabout assistance was better than nothing. Zipping back to the main interface, he spotted a brand new icon. Item Mall. With a tap, it opened to reveal 10 items. Each one a dream come true for anyone trapped in chaos. An invisibility, talisman, walkie-talkies, a signal jammer, fireball charms, even a mini-bomb with a stockpile of 37. Not to mention nightmare-repelling powder, a healing potion, and a whopping 10 cubic meter spatial bag. Everything had to be returned after use, but who cared? It was free. Su-Bei wasted no time snatching up what he needed. Invisibility, talisman, jammer, 5 fireballs, 1 bomb, and the storage bag. Each redemption triggered a miniature wormhole, spitting the item out before him like magic loot drops. The pile grew fast. Curious, he picked up the jammer, a chunky black box with an antenna, looking like a retro telegraph machine. Thankfully, the Academy had thought ahead and included a manual. A quick read revealed its true chaos potential. Twist the knob, and within a 100-meter radius, all signals, whether psychic powers or tech, would be scrambled. The effects? Hilariously unpredictable. Abilities might short out like dry pens or backfire into something wild. Su-Bei grinned. The game had just gotten way more interesting. At just past 6 in the morning, when most were still deep in sleep, Su-Bei was already moving, calculating every second before the protagonist group made their next move toward the enemy base. Retracing his path to the wooden cabin, now alive with over 10 figures due to newly issued Academy missions, he spotted the man in the baseball cap, clearly the leader directing the group with crisp authority before they exited. No longer burdened by gear, but charged with a new electric confidence. They weren't on a collection run this time. The shift in their aura said it all. Aggression was coming. Sensing this change, Su-Bei concluded that the Academy's moves had sparked something this group was ready to strike. Back inside, the leader, now alone, toyed with an unseen device. Su-Bei activated his jammer just in time to hear the man's humbled voice through a miniature headset, speaking to a superior with reverence, a sharp contrast to the commanding presence he had shown moments before, reporting that the so-called Holy Sun still hadn't made contact. It was still early, just after 6 in the morning, and the protagonist group was probably getting ready to head towards the villain's base soon, leaving Su-Bei with limited time to make the most of his remaining moments. As he retraced his steps to the wooden cabin, the path seemed easier after his visit the day before. To his surprise, the cabin was now alive with activity, housing at least 10 people, likely due to the Academy's new missions. The man in the baseball cap, whom Su-Bei assumed to be the leader, was giving orders as the group filed out of the cabin, no longer carrying items, but radiating confidence and excitement. Something was different this time. They were not out collecting watches like before. Su-Bei sensed that the Academy's actions had prompted them to adopt a more aggressive stance. They were gearing up for something much bigger. Later, using his mental perception, Su-Bei overheard the man in the baseball cap speaking with his superior. His tone, once commanding, now held a note of humility and respect as he mentioned the Holy Sun, revealing just how much the stakes had shifted. Su-Bei raised a brow. If things were going as expected, then this so-called Holy Sun had to be Mo Xiaotian. But the idea of that kid earning a sacred title? Hilarious! Meanwhile, a low, almost eerie voice cut through the call, insisting the Holy Sun had no part in this and that staying away was the smart move. The man in the baseball cap agreed without question, claiming the Holy Sun had a bigger mission, one far above his own petty operation. The academy was stirring, so he planned to snatch the students first, especially those wearing watches. His superior approved, warning that the students might break through the space barrier soon, so there wasn't much time. One problem: the academy had handed out signal jamming tools, meaning this could be their last clear contact. No hesitation, no fear, just quiet, strategic menace hanging in the air. As the superior's voice faded with a cryptic farewell, Subei sprang into action, jamming the signal and hijacking the call. In a voice so eerily close to the original, it slid past suspicion like ink across paper. He spoke the fatal line, "One more thing." The man in the baseball cap, utterly unaware, answered without hesitation. Subei's mimicry, honed in his youth and now sharpened by urgency, held firm under the distortion of the call. Every breath was a gamble, every word a deception. He delivered a fabricated directive. Another contact within the academy, cloaked in secrecy. "Is he one of us?" the man asked. "No," Subei replied coolly, "a collaborator." One lie more, stitched into the fraying seams of the collapsing manga world. Send up a signal flare and he'll come. He doesn't offer help for free, so relying on him is only a last resort. Subei kept his identity hidden with Feng Lan, still nearby, better safe than sorry, awake or not. The man in the baseball cap wasn't convinced this so-called collaborator could be trusted, but since the order came from higher up, he went along with it. Shared interests often trump suspicion. With Subei's cryptic explanation, he pictured the collaborator as sharp but money-driven. Once the call ended, Subei waited until he confirmed all devices were shut off, then slipped away quietly. Sprawled on a tree branch 5 meters up, camouflaged by thick grass, Subei mused whether to just rest there. As always, when danger neared, his character's instinct screamed, "Vanish first!" and now was the perfect time. He'd already set his trap and had no plans to stick around. Unlike the main cast, who always seemed untouchable, Subei faced real risk. Just a rookie with powers, he'd have bailed from this alternate space long ago if not for the slim chance his presence might be needed later. Still, he figured the academy must have backup. They were probably banking on keeping most students safe. Otherwise, a surprise villain invasion should have triggered an immediate student evacuation before any rescue strategy. These kids had only been enrolled for a month, after all. Subei knew this chaos wasn't meant for them, yet it reeked of a setup by the academy, likely a twisted form of training and self-rescue. And while he figured that out, he also knew better than to throw himself into danger when the protagonist squad could handle things just fine. So he ducked out, found a quiet spot, and went into stealth mode. But turns out, he'd picked the worst hiding place imaginable. Just 2 hours in, someone crashed the party, Shizawa, panting and panicked, throwing himself behind the same tree. Then came the pursuers, 2 adults in school uniforms, all stamina and suspicion. One was ready to chase onward, but the other wasn't buying the vanishing act. "He must be hiding," he growled. And with that, the first man stopped cold. The clearing was too small, the timing too tight. Subei didn't need to peek to know they were closing, and one voice rang out, loud and commanding, "You'd better come out. Given who you are, we won't hurt you." They had already done their homework, scoping out the strong ones among the new recruits before making their move. One of them, smug and certain, wielded flight prohibition, a niche but nasty ability that turned any airborne power into dead weight. His sharper partner twisted the knife further, warning that the others had already been captured and hinting darkly at what could follow. Behind a tree, Si Zhaohua clenched his jaw, haunted by the thought that Ai Baoju and Zhou Renji might have been caught. He didn't move. He couldn't. Getting found now meant game over. These guys weren't the type to flinch at rules or reputations. From the branches above, Subei merely observed cool, detached, curious. He trusted Si Zhaohua wouldn't fall that easily. But time ticked on, and the hunters grew impatient, sweeping the area with ruthless precision. In a flash of desperation, Si Zhaohua ripped an invisibility charm and vanished just in time. The goons found only footprints and fury, one of them growling that Sai had probably used his only escape card. As the 2 men vanish into the shadows, one chuckles at the absurdity of using the Academy's own tools against them, mourning the lost chance to snag an invisibility charm just for the fun of it. Those charms are rare treasures, normally doled out only by wealthy groups like the Academy, and now locked behind the welfare mall, a shiny new system that shuts down the moment someone dares remove their watch. No sneaky redemptions, no secret peeks, but hey, their group already knows what goodies were in the catalog, so no surprises there. Still, the dreamer gets mocked. Do you think they're idiots? Because if the Academy didn't slap on restrictions, no one would touch those gadgets. Who knows what sneaky traps are baked into them? Better safe than ink. Splattered. With a laugh and a pat on the shoulder, they head off just as Subi-ei, half hidden, raises a brow, silently noting that once that watch is gone, it's game over. The man in the cap lets something slip. His intel about the mall came from someone inside the academy, or rather, someone pretending not to be. Subei's eyes narrowed. A mole. Not just any mole, but one with top-tier access, someone who had a hand in designing the mall itself. That explained too much. Like how Sun Ming's killer had waltzed in without tripping a single alarm. The academy wasn't just compromised, it was bleeding from the inside. But while others might panic, Subi-ei smirked. Leverage like this? It was gold. He shut his eyes, mind turning gears. That's when manga awareness is resurfaced, uninvited, and blunt as ever. You don't have to be that careful. Subi-ei chuckled. They both knew what this was about, his refusal to dive into the main plot. Manga awareness is pressed. You already know no one's actually going to die this time, so what are you so afraid of? Subi-ei didn't mind the intrusion. If he ever missed a beat, manga awarenesses would drop a cryptic lifeline. That was their unspoken deal. Hearing the truth laid bare, Subi-ei realized he'd seen it coming. The academy had been cautious all along, subtly bracing for danger without admitting it outright. No matter how calm things looked, this twisted space was still crawling with nightmares, and backup plans were a must. The high-tech watches were handy, sure, but backup measures? Now they were proving to be lifesavers. Subi-ei shook his head, muttering, "What can I even do?" He'd already shown off in solo matches. Group missions were more about bonding, and jumping in now without connections would only isolate him. But making friends? That would clash with his usual cold front. Better to stay out of it for now. If trouble knocked, he'd answer. Manga awarenesses wanted to question his obsession with the plot, but paused, remembering how he'd stayed uninvolved during the last chaos too. The realization hit. Subi-ei never changed, and no logic could sway him. Yet, there was something it hadn't told him, his chosen rest spot, about to turn into ground zero. So much for peace. Si Xiaohua came back the same way not long after, betting that the spot he was searched at wouldn't be checked again so soon, a clever move. But suddenly, his flight was blocked by an unknown ability. For a rookie like him, flying was his safest card, and now it was gone. His divine judgment could only take out one opponent, and while his folded wings could shield him, they couldn't stop capture. His defenses worked against classmates, but not against serious threats. Then, something strange appeared on his watch, new tasks. "Is this from the academy?" he asked. A voice from the woods answered, "It's not." Si Jiahua spun around like a startled cat and saw the last person he wanted to meet, Jiang Tianming. Clearly separated from his own group, Jiang stepped out. Though they weren't close, seeing a familiar face made Si Jiahua exhale in relief. Still frowning, he asked how Jiang knew this wasn't academy protocol. Jiang didn't hold back. "Do you know about the student from Class F who died on campus?" Si Jiahua nodded grimly. The incident wasn't widely known, but it had locked down the cafeteria, and word had spread fast. He'd been itching to uncover the truth behind this shadowy organization, especially since the only baddies that had popped up so far were the infamous Black Lightning, clearly tipping the good versus evil scale. Problem was, the manga had just started updating, and while this group had made an appearance in the last arc, the info was as clear as fog, leaving Subi-ei with nothing solid to chew on. But then, bam! A golden opportunity landed in his lap when someone who actually knew the scoop showed up. Earlier, when Subi-ei saw Si Jiahua glance back, he'd kicked himself for picking such a lame hiding spot, since Jiahua was a major character and clearly about to spark some serious plot development. Turns out, the story twist was exactly the kind of intel Subi-ei needed, and just like that, all complaints vanished. The revelation? Black Lightning had once been a legit academic group formed by a power-wielding scientist, with members sporting Black Lightning tats on their necks. Over time, they slipped into the shadows. Then came the real juice. Rumors of the group still being active underground, with whispers from the elders dripping with contempt, definitely shady vibes. Maybe some dark research going on. Subi-ei bought most of it. Because hey, In the manga world, sketchy scientists are practically a requirement. 8 out of 10 end up doing creepy stuff. After all, the human body hides a mountain of secrets. He had always been intrigued by this elusive organization. Up until now, the only villainous force was Black Lightning, clearly tipping the moral scales, and they were likely behind it all. Sadly, the manga's updates had been stingy with details, and though the group had meddled in earlier arcs, nothing solid had come to light, leaving Subei nearly empty-handed. But fate turned a page. Right in front of him stood someone with real insider info, finally, a breakthrough. Earlier, when Subei saw Si Xiaohua turn around, he'd cursed his hiding spot, thinking he'd blown it. After all, Si Xiaohua was a trigger character, the kind who set stories spinning. But lo and behold, the plot twist was perfect, just what Subei needed. Black Lightning wasn't some flashy evil club. It began as a scholarly society formed by an ability-wielding scientist, their signature being a Black Lightning tattoo at the nape of the neck. Over time, they faded from sight. Or did they? The insider whispered what he'd overheard, rumors of their shadowy survival and some sketchy research that had even the elders shaking their heads. It was unproven, sure, but Subei bought most of it. After all, in manga, mad scientists were as common as filler arcs. 8 out of 10 end up running experiments no one should. And when the human body hides that many secrets, it's only a matter of time before someone starts digging. It was early morning, just past 6, and most people were still asleep. The protagonist and his group were likely preparing to head to the villain's base, so Subei had to make the most of the time left. Retracing his steps to the wooden cabin, it was much easier now since he'd been there the day before. The cabin was buzzing with activity now. At least 10 people were inside. The man with the baseball cap, probably the leader, was speaking. Soon, he waved his hand, and the group filed out, not carrying any items but walking with newfound confidence and energy. From a distance, Subei could feel their excitement. They weren't out collecting watches like the day before. Something big was about to go down. The Academy's actions had clearly shaken them up, and they were now planning to take more aggressive steps. Subei, using his mental perception, noticed the man in the baseball cap was alone in the cabin, tinkering with something again. Without hesitation, Subei activated his jammer, which could normally only monitor electronic activity when idle. Through his jammer's headset, Subei overheard the man speaking to his superior. "Yes, the Holy Sun still hasn't contacted me," the man said, his tone completely different from before. It was humble, respectful, far from the commanding presence he'd shown earlier. Si Xiaohua hesitated, then caught on Jiang Tianming. Wasn't just here to chat. With a raised brow, he asked the obvious. Jiang Tianming rolled his eyes like he'd been waiting for that. Of course he was here for the mission, same as Si Xiaohua. No one stuck around with a survival watch unless they had unfinished business or someone to save. These two didn't like each other much. Jiang Tianming thought Si Xiaohua was too smug, while Sai found Jiang's bluntness unbearable, but today, that didn't matter. With the world unraveling and danger closing in, pride had to take a back seat. So Jiang Tianming cut the tension with a quick offer. "Want to team up?" Sai paused, calculating, then nodded. "Let's team up." And from above, Subei watched, half smiling. It was like a live-action version of his favorite kind of manga moment when rivals finally understood each other, just enough to fight side by side. He'd seen countless cliché friendships where rivals became allies, but watching it unfold in real life felt hilariously over-the-top typical manga world drama. Ever since arriving at the Ability Academy and realizing he was living inside a manga, Subei had avoided reading shonen series, but now he figured grabbing a few volumes might help him predict the chaos better. In Chapter 56, after Jiang Tianming and Si Xiaohua reached a truce, they didn't leave, but instead lingered under a tree, plotting their next steps. Subei, spotting their lack of urgency, instantly felt a migraine brewing because where the protagonist went, trouble wasn't far behind. Sure enough, peace shattered quickly when a new enemy appeared, not the one chasing Si Xiaohua earlier, but a totally different character. She had short, deep purple hair and wore a tight black bodysuit, her gentle-looking face twisted by a sharp jawline and blazing red lips, radiating classic femme fatale vibes. If there was one thing manga worlds got right, it was the clear visual distinction between heroes and villains. Aside from the occasional undercover twist, good guys looked wholesome, and bad ones? Well, they wore it like a uniform. Oh? What do we have here? 2 little mice! She eyed them with a smirk sharper than her whip, mockery dancing in her gaze as she taunted, "Ready to be caught?" With a flick, a whip shimmered into being 2 meters of snakeskin menace, promising scars and ruined beauty. Her voice was sugar-coated malice. "If you surrender now, Big Sis might go easy on you." But surrender? That word didn't exist for Si Xiaohua. Wings bursting wide, he scoffed, "You're not worthy," and yanked Jiang Tianming skyward into a treetop refuge. Not too high, just safe enough. Jiang, caught off guard midair, yelped in confusion. "What the?" His shout met only with Si Xiaohua's snap. "Saving you." Irritation crackled as loud as their clash. Some alliances were forged, not in friendship, but in defiance. Si Xiaohua had it all figured out. The purple-haired woman's whip had insane range, so the ground was basically a no-go zone. He didn't know her exact strength, but one smack from that thing, game over. So, up they went, straight into the air to dodge disaster. Jiang Tianming, flailing and unimpressed, grumbled about the lack of warning, questioning if Xiaohua could actually hold him. Xiaohua, icy as ever, offered to just drop him right there and then. Meanwhile, the whip-wielding woman looked on like she'd just tuned into her favorite comedy sketch, teasing the duo while her eyes locked onto Xiaohua's wings. Angel powers? Jackpot. Turns out, Xiaohua wasn't just anyone. He was a top-tier target in this mission, and while another crew was technically assigned to catch him, rewards were up for grabs. With a smirk, she watched them soar, mockingly asking if they thought flying would really keep them safe. With a sudden flick, her whip snapped toward them only it didn't stop where it should have. To Si Xiaohua's shock, it stretched unnaturally, lunging with terrifying speed. He flapped his wings frantically to dodge, but he wasn't fast enough to keep this up for long. The whip's shriek through the air was like a blade, carving silence, slamming into a tree and carving it nearly in half. One more hit like that, and someone would be in pieces. Jiang Tianming, reading the danger, shouted to attack. Si Xiaohua barked back, but launched his feathers anyway. Though they never trained together, Jiang Tianming synced in perfectly, taking control of the flying blades with his ability, turning a wild barrage into a choreographed assault. Si Xiaohua's own grip on the feathers had been loose at best. He could maybe boomerang them back, but now with support, their attacks grew sharper, smarter, unstoppable. The woman's whip danced like lightning, knocking some away, but not all. Cuts began to appear, and through gritted teeth, she sneered, "Well, aren't you two working together nicely?" She gritted her teeth, flicking away the feathers stuck to her. Her face darkened. Just 2 rookies, yet they were giving her this much trouble? Unthinkable. If she failed here, the ridicule back at base would be merciless. No more holding back. She'd initially thought the young master from that family would be off limits, too important for the organization to risk. But clearly, she'd misjudged. The real issue wasn't about injuring them anymore, it was whether she could even catch them. Her strikes turned ruthless, and the 2 boys had no choice but to stop fighting and start dodging for their lives. They hit the ground fast, realizing staying airborne just made them sitting ducks. Before, he could fold his wings and avoid that vicious whip, but she adapted fast, using it to try and trap him directly. Barely slipping from her grasp, he grabbed his teammate and dove earthward better grounded than snatched midair. She didn't care about wrecking the surroundings, lashing her whip with wild abandon through the alien landscape. Trees fell, the air crackled, and more than once, the whip nearly caught them. Forced to adapt, the 2 stopped attacking her and began targeting the whip itself. They quickly realized that taking her down head-on wasn't an option, so they aimed for the next best thing, crippling her ability. Her whip looked fragile, so they took turns with pinpoint feather strikes, hammering the same spot like a rhythm game gone rogue. Even if it was a product of her power, it still had a physical form, and that meant it could break. The purple-haired woman's frustration grew with every flick of her weapon. Damage was setting in, and she knew it. Her attacks grew fiercer, and deep inside, she made a quiet vow. She'd finally learned how to fight up close. For too long, she'd relied on ranged combat, and now she was paying the price. Had she been skilled in melee, these 2 wouldn't have dared to mock her. Only their numbers kept them alive alone. Either one would have been toast. She considered calling backup, but the thought of needing help against a pair of rookies, that burned worse than any wound. Pride wouldn't let her, so she stood her ground, convinced she'd win once their stamina gave out. Meanwhile, up in a tree, Subi Ei watched it all like it was primetime entertainment. The whole showdown felt like a messed up jump rope contest with lethal sync. Their teamwork? Scarily smooth. You could tell two people controlled the feathers, but the way they combined every strike hit harder. Like 1 + 1 had suddenly become 3. This wasn't just a fight, it was a live-action comic panel with all the ink still wet. At first, the one-on-one battles felt more like harmless. Sparring clever, maybe, but not exactly thrilling to watch. Even the showdowns against the Nightmares were underwhelming. Their mindless flailing no match for real combat flair. But this match? Now this was something else. It had power, spectacle, drama, everything a good fight should deliver. Subei was totally into it, basking in the action. That is, until karma struck back. Just as he was thinking about snacks, a whip came flying out of nowhere, slicing right through the tree he'd been chilling on. He barely dodged in time, but the impact blew away the leaves, leaving him completely exposed. Silence dropped like a hammer. Subei, Jiang Tianming, Si Zhaohua, the purple-haired woman, all frozen, speechless. The atmosphere thickened as everyone collectively thought, what the heck? Who is this guy suddenly popping out of a tree like a glitch in the Matrix? Struggling to play it cool, Subei plastered on a grin, trying hard to pass it off as all part of the plan. He tried to lighten the mood with a quip to the purple-haired girl, oh no, I've been discovered, spinning a gear in his hand before making it vanish like a magician mid-act. Her wary gaze locked onto him, sensing he wasn't just another school-uniformed first year. Anyone who stayed cool after dodging death wasn't ordinary. Just then, as the gear disappeared, a lone leaf drifted unnoticed from above until it touched her weapon. Subei snapped his fingers. Snap! The whip cracked apart. She barely had time to be shocked before coughing up blood and collapsing, unconscious. Standing calmly on the tree trunk, eyes gleaming like amethyst glass, Subei smirked, what a splendid show. Meanwhile, Jiang Tianming and the always composed Si Zhaohua stood frozen, stunned. That overwhelming enemy they had fought so hard to avoid defeated in an instant? Si Zhaohua couldn't help but wonder, had Subei been holding back all along? He didn't even need to cheat the system this time. If Subei had used his ability mid-fight, the outcome would have shattered itself. But behind that calm facade, he'd already exhaled in secret. While everyone else was absorbed in the chaos, Subei had been studying the fate compass silently ticking above the purple-haired woman's head. The moment Jiang Tianming and Si Zhaohua targeted one weak point on her whip, her compass began to tilt just slightly at first, then unmistakably to the right. Honestly, it was already leaning from the start. She was never meant to win against the plot's leads. By the time they spotted Subei, the needle was on the brink. He didn't do it for them, but he'd already embedded a gear into her compass just in case, pure caution. And when the time came, a tiny nudge from his mind sent the pointer sliding to its limit. She fell instantly. Even Subei had to admit he was kind of amazing. Not that it mattered much. Another few hits and they'd have beaten her anyway. Now, with the two of them frozen and staring, he casually dropped into his seat, leg raised, looking almost bored. What are you waiting for? He said coolly. Tie her up. Snapping out of it, they scrambled to bind her tight with ropes from the tool store, though Jiang Tianming did all the work himself. In this twisted moment of downtime, Jiang Tianming moves with eerie precision. He's done this 100 times before, his habit sharper than most fighters' blades. Watching him, Si Zhaohua seems torn, questions flickering in his eyes, but none find their way out. Instead, his gaze shifts to the real enigma, Subei. Now that's a puzzle wrapped in sarcasm. Wings retracting, voice hesitant, Si Zhaohua throws out the simplest question, why are you here? But even Subei doesn't know. He was just looking for a place to nap and somehow crash-landed into the epicenter of a narrative upheaval. He plays it cool with a smile that screams mischief. Who knows? Just wanted a nap. No one's buying it. Si Zhaohua presses harder, sensing Subei hadn't meant to intervene, so why now? Subei shrugs, eyes gleaming. Someone interrupted my show. There's a price for that. Classic. Meanwhile, Jiang Tianming, far less surprised, drags the villain into shade and asks the real question, did you just change her fate? Because unlike the others, he knows Subei well enough to suspect the gears of reality have just been tampered with. Jiang Tianming had long suspected Subei could bend fate, but witnessing the true scope of that ability left him stunned. A purple-haired, battle-hardened opponent was instantly defeated her weapon mysteriously breaking without warning. Neither he nor Si Zhaohua noticed the subtle falling leaf that marked the exact moment the whip snapped. All they saw was Subi Ei casually turning his gear as if that alone had shattered it. They were oblivious to how their own previous attacks had helped create this outcome. With a smirk and a simple gesture, Subi Ei admitted, "Just a little," implying his intervention was minimal. He merely accelerated the whip's breaking point, barely draining his energy. Still, no one bought his modesty. Si Zhaohua, incredulous, accused him of holding back during past matches, now convinced that if Subi Ei had truly used this power earlier, she wouldn't have stood a chance. His ability to alter destiny felt absurd, uncounterable, and terrifying. One twist of fate could have ended everything before it began. He thought he understood, after all, that power was like a cheat code. Maybe Subi Ei just wanted to show his real skill during the midterms without using it. Reasonable, right? But then wait a second. If Subi Ei could twist fate so the gear touched his neck, couldn't he have just made it miss too? That thought hit like a slap. Si Zhaohua froze, torn between outrage and wounded pride. "You didn't make it avoid my neck on purpose, did you?" he asked, eyes sharp. It wasn't a random accusation. He grew up obsessed with victory, raised to treat winning as survival. When he barely won against Subi Ei using his final move, he believed they were equals. But if Subi Ei had that ability and chose not to use it, was it mercy? Pity? Or just manipulation? Subi Ei blinked, utterly lost. Why was he making that leap? Sure, readers overanalyze everything, but why would Zhaohua think that? Deny it, and he might look weak. Admit it, and he'd crush Zhaohua's pride. So Subi Ei, calm as ever, just smiled and said, "What do you think?" Subi Ei didn't like avoidance. It only bred tension. Talking was for truth, not escape. So when silence stretched too long, he cut through it with a smirk and a question. "Didn't you enjoy our fight?" Si Zhaohua froze because yes, he had. Their duel wasn't like any other. Against Jiang Tianming, he dominated but been dragged down by endurance. At home, his opponents either crushed him or let him win. At school, he was unbeatable. But Subi Ei? Subi Ei was different. Their clash was pure equilibrium, attack for attack, thrill for thrill. It was the first time he felt truly alive in battle. That's why everything changed after. His nod came slowly, but it came. Subi Ei grinned wider. "Me too, so isn't that enough?" Subi Ei hated dodging problems. Talking things out was better than silent war, even if it stung. Time hadn't moved much, but pressure mounted fast, so he broke the silence with a smirk and a jab. "Didn't you enjoy our fight?" That caught the other guy off guard, because the truth hit harder than any punch he had enjoyed it. That clash wasn't like any other. The fight with Jiang Tianming had dragged on forever, a slow grind, where he eventually fell not to skill, but to stubbornness. But with Subi Ei, that was electric. Blow for blow, no pity, no shortcuts. Back home, opponents either crushed him or let him win. School wasn't much different. But Subi Ei? Subi Ei was the real deal. That fight lit something up inside him, and that's why everything changed after. So now, when Subi Ei asked, the other guy just nodded, no mask left to wear. Subei's grin widened. "Me too, so isn't that enough?" Just as he was about to speak, Subi Ei realized why his opponent was truly angry. It wasn't about losing, but about feeling mocked, like the whole fight had been a joke to Subi Ei. So Subi Ei chose his words carefully, not to apologize, but to show he had meant every move, every blow, every second. He hadn't fought to win, he'd fought to experience it. And that was the difference. That explanation landed. The tension drained from his opponent's face. For someone who burned for victory, it was enough to know Subi Ei had burned too, even without chasing the win. But then came the lingering question, why didn't you want to win? Subei's reply was simple, cryptic, powerful. Victory isn't always a good thing. What others had called cowardice or strategy now had a deeper edge. He'd seen theories online suggesting he threw the match, and instead of denying it, he leaned in because sometimes not standing out meant survival. Especially with a spy lurking in the school shadows, watching the top ranks. First place, second place, those were targets. But Subi Ei didn't explain that part. Instead, he just dropped from the tree like gravity meant nothing, landing smooth, silent, untouchable. "Anything else?" he asked, ready to disappear again. "Hey, wait!" came the reply, but Subi Ei was already leaving the frame. Jiang Tianming snapped, questioning why someone would stick around if they didn't intend to complete the mission. Su Bei, ever the enigmatic figure, paused and gave a cryptic answer, something about fate. Moments later, as he landed lightly on another branch, the ever-watchful Manga awareness chimed in, noticing Su Bei's reluctance to lie. And it was true, apart from hiding details about his powers, Su Bei had never truly lied. He either told the truth or let silence work its magic, nudging others to fill in the blanks themselves. Leaning back against the tree, he smiled and mused that lies always get exposed. But truth? Truth just waits either to be seen clearly or misunderstood. This strategy let him glide through shifting scenarios. Never fully pinned down, never fully revealed. Had he made bold claims about his power, the audience would expect him to topple giants without blinking like that purple-haired veteran. But he never did. He let ambiguity protect him. He let readers theorize, project, overthink sometimes with results even better than he imagined. That's how he adjusted the ceiling. But deep down, it wasn't just manipulation, it was his preference. Su Bei honestly believed that once upon a time, before the madness of panels and gears and prophecies, he'd been a straight-talking, genuinely handsome guy. Even now, forced to play the part of a living mystery, he refused to dissolve into the script. The spot he picked this time? Perfect. Not a single soul crossed his path until night draped the world in shadow, proof that luck wasn't rigged against him after all. Just as he finished dinner and set out to scout the terrain, his sixth sense tingled movement nearby. A group, one figure led with a rope in hand, trailing 5 bound students like trophies. It didn't take long for him to guess. These were captives taken by the operatives of Black Flash. An uneasy hunch pulled at him, someone he knew might be among them. At this stage, most survivors had some kind of narrative weight. And 5 caught at once? That was no background event. He melted into the dark, inching forward beneath trees until he caught sight of them. Sure enough, 2 familiar faces. But what a contrast. One, bruised and restrained with absurd layers of rope. The other, perfectly fine, striding ahead, even sharing a laugh with the black-clad captor. Eyes sharp, breath held. He watched the rest. Something about this scene didn't add up. They were bruised but not broken, shaken but not shattered, yet their eyes betrayed the real drama. Admiration clung to Zhao Xiaoyu like leftover sparkles from a hero's arc, while Mu Tiren drew silent guilt like background shadows. Something clearly happened, something big, but no one dared speak it. Su Bei, ever the observer with 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the panel, turned to leave until bam, jump scare, someone's behind him. Even Su Bei nearly dropped his cool, heart-pounding like panel SFX thud. It's Wu Jin, hair draped like horror foil, looking like he just crawled out of a horror crossover. Su Bei calmed himself with practiced grace. "When did you get here?" he asked. Wu Jin, cool as ink, replied, "Been following them." Su Bei caught on fast, of course. He used stealth skills to stay out of the mess. With that mystery filed under figured out, Su Bei slipped past him, ready to rest before the next twist bent the frame again. Wu Jin's gaze, despite being mostly hidden behind his hair, was impossible to ignore. His stare pierced through the silence, making Su Bei feel a strange pressure. Walking a few steps, Su Bei couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Frustrated, he turned around and asked, "Do you need something?" "Save them," Wu Jin replied simply. Su Bei fell silent for a moment, then said, "They'll all end up in the same place anyway. Why not follow them there?" "You might save more people." Wu Jin thought about it, nodding before fixing Su Bei with a dark stare. Together. This was the second time Su Bei had fallen silent, but finally, he couldn't hold it in. "You know I don't want to go, right?" Wu Jin, as always honest, responded, "I know." "Then why are you—" Before Su Bei could finish, Wu Jin interrupted, as if he had anticipated what Su Bei was going to say. "But you can. You don't want to, but you can." That "can" wasn't just about being able to save them, it meant he was the one who should go. Intrigued, Su Bei decided not to leave just yet. "What makes you say that?" Wu Jin took a moment to think. Su Bei didn't actually care about saving anyone, yet something about the moment made him not entirely against it either. He kept his face perfectly blank. Years of pretending had made him a master of unreadable expressions. But Wu Jin? He claimed he could feel Su Bei's emotions. Strange, since his ability, silent as silence, only made him fade from awareness, not read feelings. So what was going on? Was Woojin just unusually perceptive, or was this linked to that eerie second form he'd shown in the manga? Either way, Subi suddenly smiled and struck a deal. He'd save the 5 captives if Woojin revealed why he always hid behind his hair. Woojin didn't even blink. Deal. That fast? Now Subi was suspicious. Was he walking into a trap? Still, a promise was a promise. He stepped forward and examined the scene. The black-clad figure's rope wasn't normal. It moved like a whip, loose yet binding all 5 targets without fail. Subi guessed that beating this foe might be like handling the purple-haired girl before. Understand the ability, disrupt the core, and rewrite the outcome. Subi wasn't out to fight. He just needed to get the hostages out. That changed everything. With the night as cover, he sent 2 gears crawling silently across the ground until they brushed against Zhao Xiaoyu and Mutiren's ankles. No guards were watching the rear, so Mutiren noticed the copper gear right away. Zhao Xiaoyu, mid-chat with a black-clad enemy, froze for a beat, casually tucked her hair behind her ear, and spotted the gear too. Honestly, if it had been anyone else talking to the enemy, Subi would never have dared. One wrong gasp and the plan would be toast. But it was Zhao Xiaoyu cool under pressure. She took a tiny step back, instantly recognizing who the gear belonged to. She didn't know why Subi was saving her, but she started calculating her next move anyway. She was standing too close to danger. If a fight broke out, she'd be caught in it. Better to back off. Watching the scene unfold, Woojin asked deadpan as ever, "What are you planning?" Subi just smirked and fired. The gears he'd placed earlier burst to life, masked as leaves, embedded in dirt and wood, lunging from every angle toward the black-clad man, creating chaos like a dozen attackers had launched at once. The black-clad figure, caught between chaos and control, realized too late that his grip on the situation was slipping fast. Wrestling with the berserk giant in the back row, he only barely managed thanks to the leverage of terrified freshmen, but even that edge was crumbling. Just as outside attacks rattled the building, the subdued giant erupted again, sinking his fury with the storm beyond. Mental strain surged like a bursting dam. The man's abilities hit their breaking point. Cornered from within and without, he saw the truth. 5 first. Years or not, he couldn't win. Credit meant nothing now. Life mattered more. In a flash of instinct, he released the students, withdrew his powers, and vanished into the shadows. Meanwhile, Subi hesitated at the edge. The mission was done, and stepping in meant exposing his gear, his secret. But if he stayed silent, someone like Woojin might twist the story and brand him a hero, wrecking his carefully crafted persona. While Subi stewed over the dilemma, Woojin, ever calm, tossed out a casual impressive. 2 words again. Subi blinked, suspicious. Was this guy under some kind of 2-word curse? Convenient, came the answer, once more in 2. Then, noticing the confusion, Woojin finally clarified, as long as the meaning gets across. The exchange sparked a flicker of memory in Subi, an echo from an earlier pact neither of them had forgotten. Subi asked why Woojin always hid his face behind his hair. Woojin calmly replied, "Because I'm very good looking." That answer hit Subi like a ton of shoujo tropes, faces so beautiful they could kill, charm, or daze on sight. So he pushed further. "What would happen if I looked directly at your face?" Woojin, dead serious, replied, "You'd be stunned." Subi stared into his one visible eye, half sure he was being messed with. "Just stunned?" he asked again, not buying it. But Woojin only nodded. Subi couldn't ignore how, in the manga, someone who saw Woojin ended up with literal heart-shaped pupils. Was that just stunned? He had to know. With cautious resolve, he activated inner voice and manga awareness, asking them to warn him if he got mind-controlled or worse, and said, "Then can you let me see? I've been curious for a long time." He worried he might lose control, or worse, forget it all. But with no rules broken, manga awareness responded with a casual, "Okay." That small word was enough. Subi exhaled, glanced at Woojin, and braced for the reveal said to be stunning. Woojin didn't flinch. He brushed his hair back and tied it, simple and swift. Then he looked up, and everything stopped. Subi's eyes widened, breath caught. That face too flawless, too proportioned, like reality had paused to draw him perfectly. Gray eyes like pale ink, skin ghost white yet radiant, purple hair and crimson lips like brushstrokes from another world. It was a beauty that didn't belong to any gender or realm. Su-Bei, without resistance, was stunned. Wu Jin, knowing exactly what he had done, tilted his head with a quiet smile and asked, "So?" Su-Bei stared in disbelief, wondering if the guy in front of him had secretly switched personalities. Was it the haircut that did it? One moment Wu Jin was all subdued and unreadable. The next he was flashing a smug grin that somehow made him look even better. And then, just casually, Wu Jin dropped a truth bomb. He suppresses his presence when his face is hidden. But the moment it's revealed, he knows no one's more beautiful than him. Seriously? Su-Bei could barely keep up with the mental whiplash, pausing only to mutter something about how fascinating his mental state was before changing the topic altogether just to escape the awkward spiral. Su-Bei thought Wu Jin was just the shy type, someone who'd rather vanish behind a mask than deal with the spotlight. But when Su-Bei casually said as much, Wu Jin cracked up, tears in his eyes, grinning like a guy who knew the punchline to a cosmic joke. "Ha ha ha! Trouble shows up the second I show my face beauty's a real curse, huh?" he said, laughing so hard he had to wipe his face. Then, quieter, he added, "But it's safe with you." I can say things like this. "Su-Bi," deadpan as ever replied. "Thanks for the misplaced trust," already noting the bitterness beneath Wu Jin's laughter. He didn't call it out, no point if Wu Jin was pretending nothing hurt. But inside, Su-Bei knew if he ever needed an edge, Wu Jin's secrets were potential tools. Still, he didn't dig yet. Wu Jin wasn't telling everything anyway. Pushing aside the tall grass, Su-Bei refocused. The 5 students from earlier were still there, using potions to patch themselves up. Maybe staying put wasn't the worst move. Sure, the black-cloaked attacker might return, but odds were slim. For now, night cloaked the forest, making any bold moves unwise until daylight. The enemy, convinced the group had already retreated, wouldn't return for another sweep. Su-Bei noticed no one had budged and turned to Wu Jin, now brooding with his hair down. "Go find the others," he said flatly. Wu Jin's clipped reply came sharp. "What about you?" Su-Bei arched a brow. "I'll do what I do." With a wave and zero hesitation, he vanished into the woods, tossing back. "See you in class." Alone, Su-Bei lit a modest fire in a hidden nook and slipped into a light sleep. At dawn, instinct had him checking his watch. Yep, a new mission flashed across the screen. Final mission: destroy the enemy base. Clue: it's a building in the forest. Use a tracker or get lost. Reward: 10,000 points. Su-Bei smirked. His earlier nudges hadn't gone to waste after all. On the final day of the story, Su-Bei remained perched atop a tree, observing the flow of fate without making a single appearance. His goal was not fame or popularity, but the mastery of his abilities through the manga's narrative. The more he stayed out of sight, the fewer mistakes he would make, and the less attention he would attract. With his final form still unachieved, he needed to focus on refining his powers rather than stepping into the spotlight. From his vantage point, Su-Bei kept a close eye on the compasses hovering above everyone's heads, studying the large hands that indicated major future outcomes. As he observed, he began to piece together a theory. The compass, divided into 2 halves, predicted whether an outcome was positive or negative, with the large hands foretelling significant events rather than immediate ones. This subtle observation could be the key to his evolution, but for now, silence and distance were his allies. Su-Bei spotted a mysterious black-clad figure, its small hand pointing left, while the large one hung low, and the next time it appeared, it had already captured Jiang Tianming. In that instant, everything clicked for Su-Bei. This wasn't random. Jiang Tianming was a pawn in a grander scheme, a necessary piece to complete the final mission, annihilate the base, and escape the collapsing alternate space. While catching Jiang Tianming seemed like a win, bringing him back would doom everything. That's when Su-Bei realized the large hand held the true weight of fate. If the world's salvation depended on true victories, he had to shift his focus from small wins to massive consequences. With this, a missing piece fell into place. In the manga's endgame, Su-Bei wouldn't need brute force, just a glance at Jiang Tianming's fate compass. If the large hand still pointed downward, he'd find a way to tilt it upward. Simple in theory, messy in reality. But for now, he let himself dream. Later, as night draped the world in shadows, movement below his tree jolted him. Someone was running. From his perch, he noticed something strange. No one was around, but the grass under the tree was clearly pressed down. Realization struck him. Someone was using invisibility talismans to slip past the camp. The rustling sound suggested there were more than just a few. If the prisoners had escaped, it could only mean that the operation was already underway. He lifted his gaze toward the base camp, and then it happened. Boom! 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 Violent explosions rocked the area, flames leaping into the air, and the distant sounds of chaos and screams filled the air. Just as he processed the situation, his watch beeped suddenly, flashing a red message. Countdown to exit from the alternate space. 4:59. Only 5 minutes left. A sigh of relief escaped him as he stretched his stiff muscles after an entire day stuck in the tree. It was time to head back and finally get some rest. Su-Bei spotted a mysterious black-clad figure, its small hand pointing left, while the large one hung low, and the next time it appeared, it had already captured Jiang Tianming. In that instant, everything clicked for Su-Bei. This wasn't random. Jiang Tianming was a pawn in a grander scheme, a necessary piece to complete the final mission. Annihilate the base, and escape the collapsing alternate space. While catching Jiang Tianming seemed like a win, bringing him back would doom everything. That's when Su-Bei realized the large hand held the true weight of fate. If the world's salvation depended on true victories, he had to shift his focus from small wins to massive consequences. With this, a missing piece fell into place. In the manga's endgame, Su-Bei wouldn't need brute force, just a glance at Jiang Tianming's fate compass. If the large hand still pointed downward, he'd find a way to tilt it upward. Simple in theory, messy in reality. But for now, he let himself dream. Later, as night draped the world in shadows, movement below his tree jolted him. Someone was running. In a world where supernatural forces often blur the line between reality and fantasy, Su-Bei's latest adventure took an unexpected turn. After finding a mysterious piece of paper that seemed to materialize out of nowhere, the text on it instantly sparked his curiosity. The Holy Sun's name is, it read, leaving him no choice but to quickly pocket it and leave the area. As the countdown to escape the alternate space hit 0, everyone was transported back to the real world, and Su-Bei's mind shifted to more pressing matters. A manga update! The notification buzzed in his ear. Manga awareness! The King of Superpower has updated. Please check it out. Su-Bei couldn't resist. He knew he'd be pulling an all-nighter tonight. Time in the alternate space matched real-world time. So as the students appeared on the school field, teachers quickly took attendance, preparing for their return. Su-Bei, being one of the first to be called, casually replied, "Here," and made his way to the registration table. There, he was met by manhwa, who couldn't help but give him a hearty pat on the back. "So, you came out unscathed and this late? You're making me proud," he said, thinking Su-Bei had been in the thick of the action. Of course, Su-Bei kept quiet about his more leisurely approach to the whole ordeal. Admitting the truth could make things complicated. At the registration desk, the calm and composed figure wasn't a teacher, it was the school nurse, known for her gentle aura and soft voice that seemed to settle even the most jittery students. But Su-Bei wasn't one of them. He sat there, staring at her with uncharacteristic focus, barely registering her words. Instead of annoyance, she waited patiently, then asked with a curious smile what he'd been looking at. Su-Bei, still lost in thought, asked if she had any siblings. She did a younger sister, she answered with warmth. His response? A compliment wrapped in quiet admiration, noting how someone so gentle must be good at taking care of others. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and shifted the tone, mock stern, reminding him that compliments wouldn't get him out of paperwork. Then, straight to business. What did he do after the Academy's special mission? Su-Bei answered smoothly, recounting how he'd mostly avoided the men in black, though along the way, he managed to rescue 5 people. Other than that, he said, not much. Su-Bei carefully avoided bringing up his recent laziness, especially with Meng-Huai's hawk eyes locked on him from behind, and conveniently skipped over the part where he knocked out the purple-haired girl. After all, only 2 people had seen it, and neither seemed eager to snitch. But the 5 he rescued were another story. While Zhao Xiaoyu and Mutiran might stay quiet, the rest had definitely seen the gear, and it wouldn't take much digging to trace it back to him. So instead of hiding it, Su Bei flipped the script, turning what could have exposed him into a tale of glory, collecting praise instead of suspicion. Yilin immediately applauded his actions, calling the rescue remarkable and lamenting the lack of rankings that would have surely placed his group at the top. Su Bei, always a fan of compliments, grinned and agreed, thanking the teacher before slyly asking if he could leave, earning a swift nod of permission and sparing himself from the growing line behind him. Su Bei had barely begun to walk when Jiang Tianming's voice cut through the air, asking if he could come find him later. It was an odd question, and Su Bei, though reluctant, could hardly refuse. He sighed inwardly but gave a nod in agreement. The night was quiet, but who knew what Jiang Tianming had in mind? If it was something important, refusing could have consequences. Back in his room, Su Bei pulled out a mysterious piece of paper he'd been carrying. The strange question from earlier had vanished, but that didn't stop him. He quickly wrote down Mo Xiao Tian. As soon as the words were complete, they disappeared, replaced by a small silver ball. Su Bei caught it, intrigued. Moments later, a new message appeared on the paper. The person who finds this paper is likely the collaborator my superior mentioned. If I threw this out, it means I'm likely dead. Whoever finds this, take the item and message to Mushroom Road number 226. The Black Lightning organization will reward you handsomely. Agent number 10 failed to complete the mission. Please collect the task props. Excitement sparkled in Subei's eyes as he held the small silver ball. This was the key to connecting him with the mysterious Black Lightning organization. With it, he could solidify his identity as an ally and finally visit the location linked to them. But this object, it didn't feel like a typical mission artifact. It was an intricately designed, hollow silver sphere, housing a smaller, solid ball inside, resembling a rich kid's toy more than a tool for combat. The baseball cap man had insisted it was crucial for the mission involving the student's capture. Su Bei quickly pieced together the mission's four main objectives: keep people inside the base camp, capture Feng Lan, alter the mission tablet, and ensure the base camp's location remained undetectable. While the first point seemed impossible after the base camp's destruction, the rest seemed more achievable. But Su Bei still had no clue how to use the silver ball, and even if he did, it wouldn't help him in the current situation. So, he carefully tucked it into his suitcase, planning to buy a hidden compartment for it the next day, on Mushroom Road number 26. Subei's eyes sparkled with anticipation. This address could finally link him to the elusive Black Lightning organization. If he could mislead the readers just right and solidify himself as their ally, he'd gain access. But then there was the mysterious silver ball, delicately carved, hollow on the outside, encasing a solid core within. It looked more like an extravagant trinket than a serious artifact. Yet, according to the guy in the baseball cap, it was a mission item key to the student capture operation. Su Bei deduced 4 major points from the chaos: trap everyone in or out, preemptively seize Feng Lan, tamper with the mission tablet, and cloak the base camp's location from view. The first seemed unlikely. The base camp's destruction made sure of that, but the rest felt dangerously real. Still, the ball's function remained a puzzle. Even if he figured it out, it wouldn't help just yet. So he tucked it carefully into the innermost layer of his suitcase, already planning to buy a hidden compartment the next day. Just as he was lost in thought, a red flare burst into the night sky not far from the base camp. Su Bei stiffened, recognizing it instantly. He had once posed as the superior of a certain cap-wearing man and instructed him to use the signal flare if danger struck. Now that signal had come. Trouble's here, he muttered, checked his watch, then tore off his invisibility talisman. With a powerful leap from the tree, he dashed toward the flare's origin. Despite the tight window, his enhanced body and consistent training got him there in 4 minutes. A small clearing greeted him, clear signs of battle scattered around. The scuffle had moved west, but why launch the flare mid-fight? Brow furrowed, he scanned the ground, hoping it wasn't a distress call and he didn't stand a chance rescuing anyone under protagonist fire. Luck sided with him. Hidden in the grass was a white sheet of paper, oddly out of place in the woods, especially when they'd only carried 2 water bottles and a backpack. In the latest manga update, the story kicks off with a group competition as students gather on the school field, receiving watches before stepping into a teleportation gate. Things start light, but tension rises once the mission tablets drop, prompting the team to split up. The narrative trails Jiang Tianming and Mu Tiren as they explore nearby, hoping for encounters of interest. Meanwhile, Sue Bei, ever focused, skips the filler and zeroes in on two parts: his own scenes and the arc where the Black Lightning group makes their move. With shifting perspectives, the spotlight soon leaves Jiang Tianming cycling through other members until it lands on Sue Bei and Mo Xiaoxin. Their scenes tread into Mo Xiaotian's backstory, revealing little action and a glossed-over nightmare battle. Yet the moment that steals the show is when Sue Bei warns, "Don't put too much faith in your teammates." A single line that detonates the comments section with theories and foreshadowing, as readers question whether betrayal shadows Subei's past. In a chaotic twist, Sue Bei, now fused with Beta Sue Bei and armed with the powerful authorless gear, navigates a collapsing manga world. The once stable reality fractures as characters glitch and genres clash, leading to a race against time to prevent total erasure. Sue Bei must venture into the panel abyss, a surreal realm where forgotten stories and discarded plots breed monsters from his own classmates. With each challenge, he faces a deeper unraveling of the narrative, pushing him to confront his own identity and purpose. As the line between writer and character blurs, Sue Bei must decide whether to rewrite the world with his blank gear or let it be consumed by the very entity that controls the manga's fate. The Ink Route. The final confrontation promises to be a battle without borders, where ink and willpower determine the future of the collapsing world. The story shifts focus to Zhao Xiaoyu and her conversation with Wu Jin, which piques Subei's interest. As he reads, he realizes that Wu Jin is unusually sensitive to emotions, a trait that's both captivating and mysterious. This brings Sue Bei to remember their earlier encounter in an alternate space, where Wu Jin's beauty left a lasting impression. Sue Bei pauses his reading, massaging his temples, pondering deeply. Initially, he had believed that Wu Jin might have a dual personality, each with distinct temperaments and powers, but Wu Jin had denied this, and there was no indication he was lying. This leaves Sue Bei even more intrigued by Wu Jin's abilities. Are they truly two separate powers, or is it just two different ways of expressing one single ability? To solve this puzzle, Sue Bei turns to his teacher, Meng Huai, for answers, because when it comes to tricky academic questions, he knows he's still a student. After a brief wait, Meng Huai responds with a cryptic message, asking why Sue Bei is asking, and clarifying that there are no natural instances of people having multiple abilities. But what does this mean for Wu Jin's case? The mystery deepens. The scene zooms in on Zhao Xiaoyu deep in conversation with Wu Jin, catching Subei's attention instantly. As he watches, a knowing smirk tugs at his lips, just as he suspected. Wu Jin's emotional perception is off the charts. That familiar, dazzling face flashes through Subei's mind, along with their surreal encounter in the alternate space. He snaps the manga shut and rubs his temples, the gears turning. At first, he thought Wu Jin had a classic split personality, two versions of the same person, each with unique moods and abilities. But Wu Jin had denied it flat out, and he hadn't seemed like he was bluffing. That left one burning question. Were those dual powers really from one person, or was it a single ability wearing two masks? Curiosity overpowering him, Sue Bei shoots off a message to his mentor, Meng Huai. If it's about weird powers, who better to ask than the teacher, right? The reply comes sharp and grumpy. Why are you asking this? Sue Bei explains he's seen someone whose power operates in two wildly different ways. Meng Huai's response, no known natural cases of double abilities. None at all. Staring at the four chibi avatars with crows flapping ominously overhead, Sue Bei let out a quiet chuckle, but the humor didn't last. Moments later, the second mission tablet scene unfolded, flashing a dazzling reward of 5,000 points for surrendering their watches. Everyone except Sue Bei was visibly tempted, their eyes literally turning into coins. But something wasn't right. Even the newcomers, Wu Mingbai and Lan Subing, instinctively tensed up. Subei's misfortune sensor practically screamed danger, and only after he led the team through a clever series of deductions did the truth click. Giving up their watches meant severing their only link to escape. The comment feed lit up with wild panic, plot predictions, and desperate pleas for the cute green-haired kid's safety. While one voice mocked everyone's desperation with brutal honesty, this wasn't just another smart protagonist group. This was survival with style. Sue Bei always looked calm, but something big was brewing. Readers couldn't shake the feeling that he knew more than he let on, especially when he practically spoiled the plot with an arrow so blatant it felt like a punchline. Yet fans dove headfirst into overanalysis, convinced the arrow's color, shape, and size held some cryptic truth. Su Bei, watching it all unfold, just twitched his mouth in silent disbelief. When he split from the protagonist group, he vanished for a stretch until a lone panel brought him back, warning Chi Wang not to trust those without watches. That cryptic line hit hard when the next day's mission dropped. Suddenly, strangers in school uniforms appeared, trying to blend in. The group, already suspicious, noticed the unfamiliar faces. The warning clicked, paranoia set in, and everything spiraled. A fight broke out. Chaos scattered the group, and just as things hit peak confusion, the scene jumped to other characters only to land back on Jiang Tianming, right where the tension cut deepest. He crashed through the brush and stumbled into a reunion with Si Zhaohua Q, the chaotic comment section as fans lost it over their instant chemistry. The decision to team up, inevitable. These two were clearly future besties. Even though Su Bei had seen it all unfold live, reading it in manga form hit completely different, like nostalgia with extra ink. But just as things got cozy, a purple-haired Storm showed up and cracked the panel wide open. She didn't pull punches, but neither did Jiang Tianming and Si Zhaohua. Their powers moved independently from their bodies, letting them strike and dodge like a synced-up glitch duo. They bickered mid-battle like an old married couple, but their synergy was real. Still, the purple-haired whirlwind wasn't having it. Her whip danced with precision, parrying every blow while launching her own. Realizing brute force wouldn't cut it, the duo silently shifted tactics. Target the whip, not the wielder. A bold move, and it worked. She sensed the change instantly, irritation flashing across her face. That whip was her weak spot, and she knew it. No more time to waste, she surged her mental power, the whip swelling monstrously as she lashed out with enough force to amputate half a tree canopy in one arc. In the midst of an unexpected twist, a handsome blonde boy is spotted perched on a tree branch, shocking everyone around him. The tension in the air is palpable as two familiar figures, Jiang Tianming and Si Zhaohua, are taken aback by the sight of him. This unexpected arrival stirs confusion, especially for the purple-haired woman who has no idea who he is, but instinctively feels wary. The boy, Su Bei, offers a chilling smirk, his violet eyes betraying no warmth as he casually acknowledges his discovery. His next move, a simple snap of his fingers, brings about an agonizing pain that shoots through the woman's mind. In an instant, her whip snaps, leaving her stunned and horrified, grasping her now broken weapon in disbelief. Just before she loses consciousness, she is left to wonder about the mysterious force behind this power. Meanwhile, Su Bei stands back, quietly observing the scene with a sense of satisfaction. He knows the manga has portrayed him as a figure of sophistication, leaving out the finer details of his power. In this calculated mystery, he remains untouchable, his character growing in complexity and appeal as the author cleverly withholds information, allowing fans to remain captivated by the enigma of his abilities. He shoved past the bushes and found Si Zhaohua just like that. The chat exploded. The second they agreed to team up, it was clear these two were bound to be future besties. Su Bei had seen it live before, but the manga version hit different. That is, until the purple-haired woman stormed in like a plot twist with a whip. Her strikes were wild, but Jiang Tianming and Si Zhaohua weren't just standing targets they attacked, while bickering like a married couple in a battlefield sitcom. Still, she wasn't letting anything land. Her whip snapped through the air like a sensor bar. That's when the two switched tactics, eyes locking in full manga sync mode. Instead of her, they aimed for the whip. Smart move, easier to break than the wielder. She caught on fast and didn't like it one bit. Annoyed and done playing around, she supercharged her whip with psychic energy and swung hard, so hard she split a tree like she was editing the scene herself. As her friend plopped down 2 cups of bubble tea and caught a glimpse of that spark in her eyes, curiosity took over. "What are you watching?" Xiao Zhao's eyes lit up like a protagonist mid-transformation. "The king of superpowers," she declared, winking like it was the start of a new arc. "Come on, every character is a total hit." But her friend, ever the realist, gave a hard no, crossing her arms in an X like a disqualification move. She dove back into work mode, typing like a hacker in a countdown scene. Xiao Zhao sighed but respected the silence, returning to her manga as the plot thickened literally. Characters split up after a mysterious stone mission, and though the group dynamic seemed lost, duos started sparking with unexpected energy. Soon, they reunited, but not for peace. A hidden scheme surfaced, and Xiao Zhao practically hissed. Her friend glanced up. "What now?" Xiao Zhao grimaced. "The villains are on the move." Xiao Zhao, bracing for the emotional roller coaster of another fight scene, dreads the inevitable heartbreak because no matter who gets hurt, it's going to feel personal. Her friend, unmoved, keeps working and casually drops a line of hollow comfort about getting used to the pain. With a deadpan expression and a middle finger salute, Xiao Zhao dives back into the chaos unfolding in the manga. Jiang Tianming and Si Zhaohua locked in battle with a fierce purple-haired opponent until, out of nowhere, Su Bei appears. Radiating arrogance and raw power, the blonde enigma wipes the floor with the villainess. Xiao Zhao gasps at the scene, awestruck, and confesses to her friend, half stunned, half transformed, that she might be falling into solo fandom territory. Meanwhile, Su Bei, unaware of his rising popularity, calmly continues reading, just as chibi versions of the others stare at him in comedic disbelief and demand to know why he's even there. Back then, Su Bei hadn't thought much of it, but looking at it now through the lens of the manga, he realized how suspiciously vague his own answers had sounded true. Yes, but if he hadn't known the real story, even he would have thought he was bluffing. Then came the scene where Si Zhaohua unleashed a solo tirade, only to be silenced in 2 swift lines by Su Bei. So swift that what was once a real emotional rupture now just looked like a kid throwing a fit. And then Su Bei dropped the line. Sometimes victory isn't always a good thing, sending the reader spiraling into a frenzy of speculation and shipping chaos pairings flying left and right, logic abandoned, until someone noticed every character had a 3-character name, and the comment section officially imploded. As Su Bei scrolled past all that madness, he reached the point after his character left the stage right when the purple-haired woman opened her eyes. Jiang Tianming and Si Zhaohua were desperate to get intel on Black Lightning, but the purple-haired woman wasn't cracking. She didn't beg, didn't threaten, just scoffed and dared them to do their worst. Jiang Tianming, the more composed of the two, left briefly, leaving Si Zhaohua alone with her. Calm and collected, he hinted at turning her over to the authorities, hoping that might shake her. But she only laughed, amused by their naivety, and dropped a bombshell. None of them were really there. Everyone from her side was using avatars, and if things got dicey, they just vanished back to their real bodies. Si Zhaohua's eyes narrowed as the pieces clicked. This wasn't just a fight, it was a trap. She laughed with a sneer, mocking their struggle. How else could 2 newbies hold out against her, unless she wasn't really there? Turns out, her real body wasn't even present. It was just a projection. That explained a lot. Si Zhaohua finally connected the dots. No wonder their enemies seemed underwhelming, despite the effort Black Lightning had put into this trap. Su Bei had felt it too. The black-clothed enemies weren't pushovers, but they weren't top tier either. Something wasn't adding up unless this was just the front line, and the real players stayed hidden. Avatars. Clever move. It kept their core members safe while still running the mission. But one stood out, the man in the cap. That guy wasn't fake. His strength was real, his presence solid, and Su Bei suspected he was a suicide agent ready to explode if caught. Ironically, his death was the perfect cover. No one would trace back Su Bei's fake identity now, not unless he revealed it himself. And just like that, Jiang Tianming returned, bringing along a pink-haired boy, Li Shu. Su Bei had definitely heard the name Li Shu before. Wasn't he the mysterious one who made even strong opponents surrender without a fight? Now Su Bei remembered. Li Shu had once faced Jiang Tianming, and no one ever figured out his ability. But this time, with the battles over and secrets no longer hidden, things got weird fast. With a calm smile, Li Shu placed his hand gently on the purple-haired woman's head, and suddenly pink energy streamed from his palm straight into her skull. The manga panels shifted, the woman's alert expression melted into confusion as she whispered about her mission, only to suddenly convulse in pain. Her fingers stretched, twisted, and then she liquefied into a pool of blood like ice cream under the sun. Su Bei, watching this grotesque transformation, muttered with dawning horror that this villain group wasn't playing around. What started as a breezy adventure story had just taken a brutal turn. Even though she was only a projection, her suffering was too real. If this was how they treated their own, Su Bei couldn't imagine what they'd do to enemies. Su Bei realized he had to reassess the hidden storyline if he truly wanted to engage with Black Lightning. He needed to be fully prepared, armed with enough aces to avoid total disaster from even one wrong move. Meanwhile, Li Shu's strange yet fascinating ability came to light. It seemed to manipulate perception through illusions, which explained why the purple-haired woman spilled the truth and why his opponents surrendered in individual battles, likely believing he was unbeatable, a chilling power that reminded Su Bei of Wu Jin's dual personality. Before vanishing, Li Shu cryptically reminded Jiang Tianming of their mysterious agreement, making Su Bei think the guy was just odd. Once Jiang Tianming's arc wrapped up, the manga turned to Lan Subing and Wu Mingbai, who not only dodged pursuit but also saved classmates and overheard enemies discussing Feng Lan's capture, though they couldn't harm him thanks to his innate defenses. Hearing the enemy worry about what Feng Lan might have overheard, Wu Mingbai hatched a bold plan: pretend to be captured and sneak inside. He and Lan Subing later regrouped with Jiang Tianming's team, and when a new special mission was announced the next day, Wu Mingbai revealed his infiltration idea, sparking a rapid team strategy session. The spotlight then shifted once more to Mu Tiren's point of view. He only wanted to be ready when Wu Jin's hidden truth finally surfaced. But the spotlight shifted fast. Su Bei was barely involved. Jiang Tianming, Lan Subing, and Wu Mingbai got themselves captured on purpose to reunite with Feng Lan. During their brief 2-day lockup, Feng Lan, having overheard plenty of secrets, pointed them to key destruction sites, major time saver. Meanwhile, A Baoju was also captured, but you'd never guess she acted like royalty, demanding water and cushions, untouched thanks to her elite status. Si Zhouhua once feared for her safety, but Su Bei could only marvel at how thoroughly A Baoju had everyone dancing to her tune. She played the privilege game like a pro, always one smirk away from setting off her captor. Then came the escape plan. Jiang baited the baseball cap guy, Wu planted the bomb, Lan did the rescue run, and Sai ran interference with the guards. With the bomb ticking down, they vanished under the cloak of invisibility. The cap guy's despair was cinematic. He knew the mission had crumbled. Using his real body meant he had to die, sealing off the organization's secrets. Then came the twist. A flashback to Su Bei, disguised as a superior, pulling his strings. Cap Guy returned to the site of confrontation, slipped a silver orb into a blank page, and stashed it in the grass. His final act then came the Academy teachers, launching the final attack. He was just preparing the perfect comeback for when Wu Jin's secret finally blew up. Meanwhile, Su Bei faded into the background as Jiang Tianming, Lan Subing, and Wu Mingbai pulled off a dramatic self-capture to rendezvous with Feng Lan, who, thanks to her uncanny eavesdropping skills, handed them a shortcut to mission success. Among the captives was Ai Baoju, completely unfazed, treating the whole ordeal like a spa day, demanding water and cushions, her captors too wary of her status to deny her. Si Zhouhua had feared the worst, but clearly underestimated Ai Baoju's elite-level entitlement. She hadn't even smudged her makeup. With a flick of strategy, Jiang Tianming taunted the man in the baseball cap. Wu Mingbai planted the bomb, Lan Subing broke everyone out, and Si Zhouhua played diversion for the guards. Boom was imminent. And thanks to invisibility, the crew slipped out clean. Cut to the man in the cap, staring into the explosion's aftermath with dead-eyed despair. His mission failed, and his only option left: vanish, body and all, to protect the big secrets. Flashback time. Su Bei, in disguise, had given him orders earlier. Now, with ritual precision, the man placed a silver ball inside a blank sheet of paper and hid it in the grass, right where he'd clashed with Jiang Tianming. Just as he finished, Academy teachers arrived, ready to rain down blows. Even after poisoning himself, the man in the baseball cap refused to go down quietly, dragging the chaos far from the battlefield. But just when the dust seemed to settle, a mysterious figure stepped into the field, only their white sneakers visible as a voice echoed ominously from above. "Where did the item go?" Su Bei, watching this unfold, raised an eyebrow. That wasn't him. He'd been using an invisibility charm and never said a word. Suspicion turned toward Mo Xiaotian, who had conveniently vanished from the final chapters, likely busy spinning his own subplot. Maybe he hadn't shown himself before, but he clearly knew enough to act when it counted. Readers, now fully convinced that Black Lightning had inside help, would probably assume Su Bei was behind those sneakers. That would be a problem. Sure, being the villain had its thrills, but this was still a shonen story, and sooner or later, the audience would turn against him. Once the excitement wore off, their sympathy would swing back to the heroes, and the idea of Subei being a secret enemy would flip their loyalty. He didn't need to be the fan favorite, but having the crowd against him? That just wouldn't do. The protagonist knew that as more people disliked him, staying strong would only get harder. He needed decoys. Like a classic comic plot twist, a mysterious trio would keep readers guessing and the hype alive. He couldn't use the main trio, but Mo Xiaotian and Mu Tiren, perfect fits. Zhou Renji, also ideal. Subei figured the creator had the same plan, especially since all three were missing during the big group mission. That absence screamed suspicious, perfect for throwing fans off the trail. After piecing it all together, Subei unraveled a handful of secrets. Si Xiaohua could attract nightmares. Wu Jin had a dual personality and striking looks. Mo Xiaotian was the holy son of a shadowy group called Black Lightning, and the road to that group ran through Mushroom Road 26. The battle wasn't just action-packed, it refilled Subei's arsenal of clues. With short-term goals checked off and new mysteries unfolding, he turned to the forums. Chapter 60 revealed a buzz of fan theories and excitement. Jaw-dropping fights, flawless teamwork, love for the bond between characters, and wild speculations about Black Lightning and a mysterious figure who showed up at the end. Subei skims through the threads and suddenly freezes. Wait, did Mu Tiren really take on two enemies by himself? That detail completely slipped past him during the heat of the chapter. While Class F's other teammates offered minor support, Mu Tiren was apparently pulling double duty solo. The comment section erupts, readers are stunned, laughing, even accusing the author of losing it. Someone points out the irony. Zhang Tianming and Si Xiaohua needed to tag team just one enemy, but the supposedly weakest guy in the group handled two? That's either next level hidden strength or narrative chaos at its finest. And as the thread title cheekily hints, people are starting to ship Subei and Si Xiaohua, though no one's settled on a CP name yet. Maybe the enemies really were weak, or maybe they just look dumb either way. Someone's totally converted into a fan of Mu Tiren after this. Tough guys just hit different. And let's be honest, battle damage has never looked cooler. It's the kind of visual flair you usually see in manga, but this time, it feels like it actually means something. There's also this hunch floating around. Mu Tiren won't just stay the dependable big brother type, he's definitely got deeper layers coming. And suddenly, everyone's chanting the same thing like a prayer. May your kind words come true. Mu Tiren was tragically trapped, his sense of justice shackled the moment someone became a hostage he couldn't act freely, and the situation exposed just how easily righteousness can be restrained. But then came Zhao Xiaoyu, and she completely stole the spotlight, not through force, but finesse. Her lack of overwhelming power didn't matter. She navigated through enemies like a pro, wielding emotional intelligence like a secret weapon. In a world collapsing into chaos, she stood untouched, subtly steering events while others struggled. Among all the chaos, she emerged as the quiet force who helped everyone without drawing blood. Someone even called her the ultimate scheming beauty, and honestly, she might be right. Emotional intelligence? It's not just a trait, it's a superpower, and Zhao Xiaoyu proved it with style. Maybe the enemies were just pushovers, but those two didn't exactly scream threatening. They looked more like comic relief than real danger. But then someone unexpectedly found themselves rooting hard for Mu Tiren, because let's face it, there's just something magnetic about a tough guy who walks through chaos like it's a breeze. The way he stood battered but unbroken made battle damage look like fashion. And while plenty of manga try that vibe, this one actually pulls it off with real flair. Still, there's this creeping feeling that Mu Tiren's not just the dependable big brother type. There's something more brewing behind that iron gaze. And readers are already crossing fingers, whispering the same hope over and over. May those words come true. An expert suddenly appears above no name, no setup, just raw authority dropped into a world already cracking apart. Someone else reels from the avalanche of words, overwhelmed by the chaotic overflow. Then comes the gritty admiration. Mu Tiren walks despite his wounds, his endurance legendary, but Zhang Tianming's resilience is no less intense, shaped by a childhood carved in hardship. Reactions spiral. One voice gasps, feeling attacked by that truth. Another cries out for justice, cursing the bullies that shaped Jiang's pain. Finally, a question cuts through. If Jiang's strength has roots, what of Mu Tiren? What buried trauma fuels his unbreakable will? Seeing the mysterious thread, Subei closed it with a thoughtful frown, his curiosity about Mutiren's background still unresolved. He had tried to ask twice before, but Mutiren had skillfully dodged both times, clearly unwilling to open up. Yet Mutiren didn't fit the mold of someone with a troubled past. None of the defensive traits Subei had seen in others were there. Instead, he came off like a warm-hearted eldest son from a well-adjusted family. So why the secrecy? No clues. No leads. Subei shrugged it off for now, trusting the author to eventually spill the truth. Shifting focus, he skimmed the threads about himself, mostly fans losing their minds, with a few wondering about his abilities. That was perfect. Let the mystery grow. The more they speculated, the more power he'd gain in their eyes. Then came the Black Lightning threads. Now this. He clicked with genuine interest. As the manga spirals into narrative chaos, the long-shrouded antagonists finally step into the light. The mysterious Black Lightning organization, born from rogue scientists with abilities, now operating from the shadows to dismantle the Ability Academy. Their first move? A chilling murder within the Academy walls, carried out by a purple-eyed assassin in Chef's disguise mission, unclear, but the cost was deadly. Then came the ambush in another dimension. Clones flooding the battlefield, targeting first-year students with a scheme that screams deeper intentions. But the real twist? An infiltrator hiding in plain sight among the freshmen, or worse, among the teachers. Suspicion brews as reality bends, and the newly awakened villains tighten their grip on a world already falling apart. He didn't expect the organization to have already pulled off so much, but somehow, reading every chapter felt like it took no time at all. When the OP mentioned the undercover agents, they nailed it. There's definitely more than one traitor lurking in Ability Academy, and it might be someone high up. After all, before the group competition, the head instructor said the alternate space was under school control, so how did the villains even get in unless someone opened the door from the inside? Someone else jumps in, pointing out how the chef's mysterious entry might also be thanks to a mole. Then comes a chilling theory. Maybe the bad guys came not just to cause chaos, but to capture the top students. Remember when someone warned that winning isn't always a good thing? This could be what they meant. The moment that theory drops, everyone agrees it suddenly all makes sense. Subei sees through the riddles but says nothing, holding secrets even the prophecy can't fully reveal. Readers grumble, why won't he just explain things? But he's already 10 panels ahead. The forum explodes with wild theories about the undercover agent, most circling back to that final figure with white sneakers, seen only for a second at the end. Clues? Sparse. Gender? Unknown. Just shoes bright. Wrong for the forest shoes. Subei, unimpressed by recycled guesses in one thread, jumps to another, hoping for more. But deep down, he knows the truth was never in the shoes. It's in the glitching structure of the story itself. These kids clearly don't know what real experience looks like. Only Zhang Zhang and Wu Mingbai had the sense to wear black shoes, proving they've actually seen a thing or two. Ahem. Now there's a rumor going around that Black Lightning couldn't have just planted a single undercover agent at the Ability Academy. Fair point, but let's not spiral down that theory hole without receipts. What is certain? That mystery white sneaker agent isn't some random cameo they've either been lurking in Class F or someone we've already met. Now, got any suspects? One commenter throws at Li Shu barely a blip on the radar, but with a power that's oddly compelling. Another replies, hold up, went back to check, he's actually kind of dreamy. Then boom, a third swoops in with classic genre logic. Pink hair? Definitely a yandere. He'll probably latch onto the main character like he's Salvation. I'm shipping it already. As the tension climbs, one user calls out to someone upstairs, stirring playful chaos as another jumps in with a cheeky, all right, playing this way, huh? Suspicion brews quickly, someone's already being labeled a yandere, much to the confusion of others. One voice questions the snap judgment, while another shrugs it off, suggesting they just wait to see if someone starts cooking ready-made meals, a classic red flag, apparently. Meanwhile, an observer notes that Zhang Zhang might really be spiraling into a yandere mess. Amid the wild speculations, one tries to steer the conversation back on track, doubting Li Shu's guilt and pointing to his odd affection for Jiang Tianming. If he were really unhinged, they argue, wouldn't he have already shown his cards? Some readers joke that maybe even the notorious Black Lightning organization couldn't handle this over-the-top yandere and kicked him out to be an undercover agent just to mess with others. The idea spiraled, maybe he was sent to sow chaos on purpose. but others weren't convinced. They thought the spy was just a forgettable face from Class F, blending in while collecting key intel unnoticed. And if the agent wasn't in the protagonist's orbit, how would there even be a story? After all, Class F seems packed with hidden aces. The speculation narrowed to Wu Jin and Zhao Xiaoyu, with Zhao being particularly suspicious she could casually joke with Men in Black like it was nothing. People used to think she was just emotionally sharp, but now, she might be one of the enemy herself. Naturally, she wouldn't be afraid. And Wu Jin? Oh, he's raising eyebrows everywhere. People can't forget that weird ability he showed off during the competition. Some even think he was just playing dumb, holding back the real power for the right moment. One sharp observer insists there's definitely a mole in Class F. Another throws down a challenge saying, don't you dare underestimate Xiaoyu, but still points the finger at Wu Jin. Suspicion is heavy in the air, and the votes keep stacking against him. His creepy knack for disappearing into the background makes him the perfect candidate for a double life. But just when everyone's convinced they've nailed it, someone pipes up, warning them not to count out the old thief too soon. The mystery deepens, and no one's safe from suspicion. One reader guesses Zhao Xiaoyu, calling her cunning in a good way, but another questions that logic, arguing that an undercover agent wouldn't be some weak rookie from Class F. Why would Black Lightning send a nobody when Class A has elite students with more intel and experience from constant missions? The debate intensifies as others chime in, scoffing at the idea of a novice infiltrator and pointing toward Class A as the real nest of suspicion. One user throws out Zhou Renji as a likely defector, and the reply comes instantly, indeed! After being humiliated in a one-on-one battle, he decided it was time to get back at the protagonist. During the team battle, he wasn't with the others and mysteriously wasn't captured either. What actually happened during that time? No one knows. Just moments ago, one theory pointed to the undercover agents being Wu Jin and Zhao Xiaoyu. But now, doubts have emerged. Maybe it's Zhou Renji. Maybe it's just wishful thinking from someone sitting on the sidelines. But, wait, didn't they mention the undercover agent had been planted a long time ago? If Zhou Renji really was one, it raises more questions. The manga never made it clear if the agent had been turned earlier, at least not in the final scenes. So, it's entirely possible he was swayed recently. But what if he didn't defect willingly? Maybe Black Lightning knew about his grudge against the protagonist and made the first move during the group competition. An event unfolds within the school, and somehow, Black Lightning reacts almost instantly too fast. Suspicion sparks. There must be another undercover agent feeding them intel from the inside. If so, then tracing who knew about Zhou Renji's sudden elimination could reveal the true high-level infiltrator, but that hinges on Zhou actually being the agent, which remains uncertain. As theories swirl, one user drops a 66,666 in approval, while another admits they're now rooting for Zhou to be the spy. Others chime in one prefers that outcome too, though they point out the detail that someone of Zhou's size probably couldn't squeeze into the tiny white shoes linked to the suspect. Replies pile on, agreeing that this odd but valid detail is being completely ignored in the rush to pin everything on Zhou. Su Bei didn't expect Zhao Xiaoyu or Wu Jin to be viable suspects, but now they seemed oddly fitting, especially Wu Jin, whose secret just begged for misinterpretation. Meanwhile, Zhou Renji's shoe size seemed to disqualify him as the fall guy, but hey, if the author decided otherwise, logic could take a back seat. Annoyed, Su Bei clicked his tongue. Those shoes weren't his, yet here he was, dodging suspicion like a guilty character in a bad subplot. Curiosity pulled him toward a new post about the final battle, and sure enough, the lineup raised questions. Several key players were missing. Jiang Tianming, Lan Subing, Wu Mingbai, Mu Tiren, Si Zhaohua, Ai Baozhu, and Feng Lan were all accounted for, but weren't group battles supposed to highlight team spirit? The absence gnawed at the edges of the page, and one question lingered like a shadow in the margins. Could there be a mole hidden within the protagonist's ranks? No one wanted to believe it, but that was exactly what made it dangerous. Where were Su Bei and Mo Xiaotian? Seriously, these two were almost nowhere to be seen. It's like they completely vanished from the story. Author, is it too much to ask for some equal screen time for everyone? It's getting a bit frustrating. I mean, sure, Su Bei disappearing doesn't totally shock me. If anything, I'd almost buy it if she suddenly switched sides and joined the villain's crew. But Mo Xiaotian? That's a whole nother story. Even Feng Lan made an appearance, So where was Mo Xiaoxin? Don't tell me the author actually listened to all those Wu stands and decided to push Mo Xiaoxin out of the protagonist group. What's going on here? Did I miss some major drama? In the middle of a manga forum, a heated discussion unfolds about fandoms. The topic? Wu Mingbai, a character from the popular series The King of Superpower. Some fans are shocked to see such intense devotion for Wu Mingbai, questioning if he's really that important. But one user steps in to explain, defending the character's significance, noting that Wu Mingbai is a main character in a massive series, alongside other fan favorites like Zhang Tianming and Lan Subing. The excitement doesn't stop there. It's suggested that another character, Su Bei, might soon gain a similar following, and surprisingly, the poster even admits to becoming a fan themselves. As the discussion gets heated, others can't help but laugh at the situation, with some feeling confused about the fandom drama unfolding in a manga forum. In a heated thread, fans rally to defend their favorite characters, standing firm against any criticism. One user, feeling the tension, points out the hostile vibes directed toward Wu Mingbai, sparking a quick retort questioning whether the real hostility lies with the die-hard fans themselves. Meanwhile, others shrug off the absence of Mo Xiaoxin, suggesting it's not a plot hole, but rather a setup for a hidden storyline yet to unfold. Despite the chaotic back and forth, one commenter admires the rare sight of someone sticking to a serious plot discussion, and others agree, speculating that Mo Xiaotian's mysterious absence might be part of a larger, unexplained narrative twist. In a surprising twist, it's Su Bei's fans who might have the most to gripe about this time around. As it turns out, he barely gets any spotlight in the latest storyline. One fan, initially munching away on popcorn in delight, dropped it all after reading a comment that pointed out this glaring issue. Others, equally stunned, couldn't help but agree. Was Su Bei actually slacking off this time? The question lingered. If he did have a storyline, what would it even be? Some fans started jokingly tossing around wild theories, like the possibility of him playing an undercover agent. But at this point, it's all up in the air. One thing's for sure, people are talking, and it's not just about his absence. What? No way. He'd actually prefer Su Bei to be slacking off. That's rich. One reader suddenly thinks it'd be kind of cool if Su Bei turned out to be some undercover agent like plot twist. But another instantly shuts that down. Having Su Bei be the mole would just scream too obvious. As the debate heats up, someone else gets stuck in a narrative crisis. Should he even have a storyline? Or is it better for him to stay chaotic, glitching in and out of meaning like the world he's trapped in?